I walked into that house carrying a home-cooked dish and a heart full of hope, only to be met with the same old cold shoulders and sharp tongues. For my sister, they had a luxury cruise package and a standing ovation. For me, they had a crumpled $2 lottery ticket and a room full of people laughing at my life. They thought they were handing me a joke, but they actually handed me $100 million and my first real chance to walk away forever. My name is Camille Thompson, and if there is one thing I have learned in my 34 years on this earth, it is that hope is a dangerous thing to bring to a Thanksgiving dinner. I stood on the front porch of my parents' sprawling brick house in Charleston, South Carolina, tightening my grip on the ceramic casserole dish I was carrying. It was heavy, still warm against my palms through the oven mitts, filled with a sweet potato soufflé I had made from scratch. In the crook of my other arm, I cradled a bouquet of dahlias I had grown myself in the small patch of earth behind my rental apartment. They were vibrant, deep burgundies and bright oranges, a testament to months of careful watering and attention. They were small proofs that I was doing okay, that I was capable, that I was trying. I took a breath, letting the cool November air fill my lungs, trying to steady the sudden spike of anxiety that always hit me right before I crossed this threshold. From inside, the house sounded like a hive. I could hear the roar of voices, the clinking of glass, the heavy bass of laughter that didn't sound quite genuine. There were at least 30 relatives packed in there today, aunts, uncles, cousins, distant relations who only showed up when there was free food and an open bar. My parents loved a full house. They loved an audience. I nudged the door open with my shoulder and stepped inside. The heat hit me first, smelling of roasted turkey, expensive perfume, and sage. Then came the noise. It was a wall of sound. Everywhere I looked, people were holding up phones. Flashes were going off. Ring lights were set up in the corners of the living room. This wasn't just a family gathering. It was a production. My mother, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my car, was directing my younger cousins into a perfectly posed group photo near the fireplace. "Chin up, Jessica. Smile like you mean it," she barked, her voice shrill but masked with a veneer of cheerfulness. No one looked at me. I stood in the entryway for a full minute, awkwardly balancing the hot dish and the flowers, feeling like a ghost in my own history. Finally, my father bustled past, holding a bottle of wine. He stopped, blinked at me, and didn't even smile. "Camille," he said, stating my name like it was a fact on an inventory list rather than a greeting. "You're late." "I'm on time, Dad," I said, forcing a smile. "I brought the soufflé and flowers from my garden." He didn't look at the flowers. He gestured vaguely toward the back of the house. "Kitchen, the caterers need some space out here. And once you put that down, grab the coats off the railing and move them to the guest room upstairs. It looks messy in the background of the photos." He turned away before I could answer, his attention already snapping to the front door which had just opened behind me. "Sabrina!" His voice changed instantly. It went from flat gray to technicolor bright. "Everyone, Sabrina and Gavin are here." I froze, turning slightly to see my older sister breeze in. She looked flawless. Of course. Her hair was a cascading wave of blonde perfection. Her makeup done by a professional. Her hand resting delicately on the arm of her husband. Gavin Rourke. Gavin was wearing a suit that looked tailored to the millimeter, his smile gleaming white and practiced. My mother abandoned the photo shoot and rushed over, throwing her arms around Sabrina. "Oh, look at you. You look stunning, darling, absolutely perfect." We tried to coordinate with the table settings. Sabrina laughed, the sound light and airy. Gavin thought it might be too much, but I said, "It's Thanksgiving. Let's give them a show." "You are the show, sweetheart," my mother cooed. I watched them for a second too long. I watched my father clap Gavin on the back, shaking his hand with a vigor he never showed me. I watched the cousins swivel their phone cameras toward the golden couple. I watched them be the center of the universe, and then I looked down at my homegrown dahlias, slightly wilted now from the heat of the hallway, and I felt foolish. I turned and walked toward the kitchen, my boots heavy on the hardwood. The kitchen was chaotic, filled with catering staff moving trays of appetizers. I found a small clear spot on the granite counter and set my dish down. I searched for a vase for the flowers, but every vessel seemed to be in use. I eventually found a large water glass in a cabinet, filled it from the tap, and shoved the stems inside. I pushed them into a corner near the coffee maker, where hopefully no one would knock them over. I was about to head back out to do my assigned chore, moving the coats, when I heard hushed voices coming from the pantry. The door was slightly ajar. "It is all booked, right?" It was my mother's voice, low, urgent. "Yes, calm down," my father replied. "I finalized the transfer this morning, $12,000 for the deluxe suite, balcony, priority boarding, the works." I stopped. My breath hitched in my throat. $12,000. That was more than half my annual rent. "Good," my mother said. "Sabrina needs this. She's been so stressed with the house renovations. A 2-week cruise is exactly what the real family needs to reconnect." The real family. The words hung in the air like smoke. "What about Camille?" my father asked. There was no concern in his voice, just a logistical query. "Did you tell her we're all going in January?" "Oh, please," my mother scoffed. "Camille is too busy. You know how she is, always struggling with some project or job. She wouldn't fit in on a cruise like that anyway. She doesn't have the wardrobe. Besides, she prides herself on being so independent. Let her be independent." Independent. It was their favorite code word in my family. Independent didn't mean strong. It didn't mean capable. It meant unwanted. It meant, we don't have to worry about you because we don't care enough to try. It was the label they slapped on me so they didn't have to feel guilty about leaving me behind. I felt a heat rise up my neck. Hot and prickly. I shouldn't have done it. I should have walked away. But 34 years of silence suddenly felt like too much to carry. I pushed the pantry door open. My parents jumped. My mother actually clutched her pearls, a cliché in action. My father frowned, his face darkening. "Camille," my mother said, her voice sharp. "It is rude to sneak up on people." "I wasn't sneaking," I said, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts to keep it steady. "I was getting water. I heard you. You're going on a family cruise?" My father sighed, looking annoyed that he had to deal with this. "It's a celebration for your mother's birthday in January. We decided to make a trip of it. And the real family is going," I repeated, looking my mother in the eye. "That's what you said. Who is the real family? Mom? Is it just the people with the right wardrobe?" "Don't be dramatic." "Camille," my mother snapped, smoothing the front of her dress. "We just know how busy you are. You're always working those odd hours, doing your little freelance things. We didn't want to pressure you. You've always been so independent." There it was. She threw the word at me like a stone. "I'm not too busy," I said quietly. "I would have loved to go. I would have made the time." "Well," my father said, checking his watch, dismissing the conversation entirely. "It's too late now. Everything is booked. Maybe next time. Now, did you move those coats? It looks like a rummage sale in the hallway." They brushed past me. Just like that. I stood there, staring at the pantry shelves, at the rows of expensive imported olive oil and truffle salt, feeling a hollow ache in my chest that was so familiar I could almost name it. I walked out of the kitchen, needing air. I headed toward the back hallway, away from the noise of the party. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes for a second. "Girl," the voice was raspy, weak, but commanded attention. I opened my eyes. Grandma Evelyn was sitting in her wheelchair in the alcove of the hallway. She looked frail. Her skin was like parchment paper, translucent and thin, and she seemed to have shrunk since I saw her last month. But her eyes, pale blue and piercing, were sharp. They were the only things in this house that ever really saw me. "Grandma," I exhaled, crouching down beside her. "I didn't see you there. Are you okay? Do you need water?" She didn't answer. Instead, She reached out with a hand that trembled like a leaf in the wind and gripped my wrist. Her fingers were surprisingly strong. She pulled me closer, her gaze locking onto mine. She didn't say a word. She just squeezed my hand. Once, twice, hard. It wasn't a comforting squeeze. It felt urgent. It felt like she was trying to pass a message through her skin into mine. A warning code that I didn't have the cipher for yet. She looked toward the living room where Gavin's loud laugh was booming off the walls, then looked back at me, her eyes narrowing. "Be careful," she whispered. The words were so faint, I almost missed them. "Careful of what, Grandma?" I whispered back, but the moment broke. My cousin hurried down the hall, phone in hand. "Camille, Aunt Linda is looking for you. She spilled red wine on the carpet and needs club soda. Stat." Grandma Evelyn let go of my hand, sinking back into her chair, the mask of the frail old woman slipping back into place. But as I stood up, I felt the phantom pressure of her grip on my wrist, a warning. Dinner was an exercise in endurance. I was seated at the far end of the kids' table, despite being 34, because there wasn't enough room at the main table where Sabrina and Gavin held court. I ate my turkey in silence while my teenage cousins texted each other and ignored me. I watched my parents fawn over Sabrina every time she spoke. The room seemed to lean in. "Gavin just closed a massive deal," Sabrina announced, her voice projecting perfectly. "We're thinking of buying a vacation home in Aspen." "Incredible!" my uncle shouted. "Smart move. Gavin, real estate is king." I poked at my stuffing. I wondered if anyone had tried my sweet potato soufflé. I glanced at the buffet. The dish was untouched, shoved behind a massive platter of store-bought rolls. After the plates were cleared, the ritual began. It was time for the announcements and gifts. This was my father's favorite part. He loved to play the benevolent patriarch. He stood at the head of the table, tapping a spoon against his wine glass. The room went silent. 30 faces turned toward him. "This has been a wonderful year," he began. His chest puffed out. "A year of growth, a year of success, and we want to reward that." He reached under the table and pulled out a sleek, glossy folder. "Sabrina, Gavin," he beamed. "Come here." They stood up, feigning surprise, and walked to the head of the table. My father handed them the folder with a flourish. "We know how hard you've been working," my mother added, standing up to join them. "And we wanted to give you something to help you relax. Something for the whole family. Well, the core family." Sabrina opened the folder. She gasped. A perfectly theatrical hand-to-mouth gasp. "Oh my God!" she shrieked. "A Caribbean cruise, the Royal Palm Suite." 2 weeks, my father announced to the room. "All expenses paid. January." The room erupted. Applause. Cheers. Flashes popping like fireworks. Gavin shook my father's hand vigorously. Sabrina hugged my mother, wiping away a tear that didn't ruin her mascara. "You guys are the best," Sabrina cried. "This is exactly what we needed." I sat there, freezing cold. Everyone was clapping. I clapped too, because if I didn't, I would be the jealous sister. I pasted a smile on my face that felt like it was cracking the skin. My father waited for the applause to die down. He looked satisfied. Then, his eyes slid to the end of the kids' table, to me. "And Camille," he said. His voice dropped an octave. It lost all the warmth, all the grandeur. "Come here." The room went quiet. Not the respectful silence of anticipation, but the awkward silence of a joke being set up. I stood up. My legs felt heavy. I walked the length of the room, feeling 60 eyes on my back. When I reached my father, he didn't have a glossy folder. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thin white envelope. It wasn't even sealed. He held it out to me. "We didn't forget you," he said. I took the envelope. It felt like nothing. I opened it. Inside was a single slip of pink thermal paper, a Mega Millions lottery ticket. I looked closer. It was wrinkled. There was a coffee stain on the corner. It looked like something he had fished out of his cup holder in the car on the way over. "It is for tonight's drawing," my father said, shrugging. Who knows? Maybe you will get lucky. I stared at the ticket, the numbers blurred. The price was printed at the bottom. $2, $2. They had spent $12,000 on a cruise for my sister, and they gave me a wrinkled $2 lottery ticket. It fits your situation, my mother said loudly, her voice cutting through the silence. She laughed. A short, sharp sound. You know, always hoping for a big break instead of working a real career. A ripple of laughter went through the room. My face burned. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to dissolve into the floorboards. Then Gavin spoke up. He leaned back against the mahogany sideboard, swirling his scotch, a smirk playing on his lips. Hey, don't knock it, Camille, he drawled. It's the only way you're ever going to see that kind of money. God knows you've never had luck or leverage. The room exploded with laughter, real, belly-aching laughter. My uncles, my cousins. Even the catering staff seemed to be smirking. They weren't laughing with me. They were laughing at the spectacle of my smallness. I stood there, clutching the $2 ticket, the paper crinkling under my thumb. I looked at my parents, who were grinning at Gavin's wit. I looked at Sabrina, who was too busy admiring the brochure for her luxury suite to even notice me. I forced the corners of my mouth up. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, turned around, and walked back to the kids' table. But as I sat down, the laughter ringing in my ears like tinnitus, I carefully folded the ticket and slipped it into the pocket of my jeans. They thought it was trash. They thought it was a punchline. But as I sat there, invisible in a room full of people, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was cold. It was quiet. And it was dangerous. I did not cry. That is the first thing you need to understand about that moment. Tears would have been a surrender, and I refused to give them that satisfaction. Instead, I let the laughter wash over me like dirty water, cold and stagnant, while I turned myself into a recording device. I stood there near the kids' table, my hand resting casually in my pocket against that crinkled slip of paper, and I watched them. I did not look at the floor. I looked at faces. I cataloged the reactions of every single person in that room. I saw my cousin Mike, who owes me $500 from 3 years ago, laughing so hard he spilled his drink. I saw my mother beaming at Gavin, her eyes crinkling with a pride she had never once directed at me. I saw my father checking his phone, already bored with the cruelty he had just orchestrated, as if hurting me was just another item on a checklist he had completed for the day. But I also saw the others. I saw who looked away. My cousin Sarah, who was usually the first to join in, was staring intently at her napkin, her jaw tight. She knew this was wrong. She knew it crossed a line. And then there was Aunt Denise. Denise Carver is my mother's younger sister, but they might as well be from different species. Denise stood by the buffet table, holding a glass of iced tea, and she was not laughing. She was staring right at me. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin, white line. When our eyes met, she gave a microscopic shake of her head. It was a command. Do not react. Do not explode. Do not let them see you bleed. I took a slow breath, nodded once at her, and sat back down. I picked up my fork and took a bite of cold turkey. It tasted like sawdust. But I chewed it, I swallowed, I made myself small, and I waited. The rest of the evening blurred into a predictable rhythm. Once the performance of the gift-giving was over, the family lost interest in me. I became furniture again. The cameras were put away, and the real business of the night began, drinking and gossiping. When the clock struck 9, the guests started to filter out, leaving only the core family and a few stragglers. That was my cue. Without anyone asking, I stood up and began clearing the table. This was the unspoken rule of every holiday. Sabrina was the guest of honor. I was the unpaid help. I carried stack after stack of china into the kitchen. My hands were raw from the hot water and soap, scrubbing gravy off plates that cost more than my car payments. From the living room, I could hear the murmur of voices. They were looking at cruise brochures on a tablet. We need to look at evening wear, I heard Sabrina say. Gavin, do you think a white dinner jacket is too much? Nothing is too much for us, babe, Gavin replied, his voice smooth and oily. I scraped leftover stuffing into the trash. The domesticity of the scene was suffocating. I needed to breathe. I needed a moment where I wasn't surrounded by the evidence of my own exclusion. I dried my hands on a dish towel and walked out of the kitchen, heading down the hallway toward the back of the house. I told myself I was looking for more trash bags, which were usually kept in the closet inside my father's study. The study door was closed. I turned the handle and slipped inside, the silence of the room wrapping around me like a blanket. The room smelled of cedar and stale cigar smoke. Usually, my father kept this room immaculate. It was his sanctuary, his command center. But tonight, it looked like a storm had passed through it. There were papers everywhere. Stacks of files were teetering on the edge of the mahogany desk. An open briefcase lay on the leather armchair, its contents spilling out. It was jarring. My father was a man who obsessed over appearances, who ironed his jeans. This chaos felt wrong. It felt desperate. I walked over to the closet to grab the trash bags. But as I passed the desk, something caught my eye. It was the color red, a stamp. I stopped. Lying on top of a pile of manila folders was a letter with a bold red stamp across the front. Final notice. I shouldn't have looked. I should have grabbed the bags and left. But the curiosity was a physical pull in my gut. I reached out and turned the paper over. It was a credit card bill. The balance was staggering. $38,000, and the minimum payment was 3 months overdue. I frowned. My parents were wealthy. They were the kind of people who bought new cars because the tires on the old ones were wearing down. They didn't have overdue bills. I moved a stack of magazines aside and found another letter beneath it. This one was from the water company. Past due. Beneath that, a letter from a collection agency regarding a luxury vehicle lease. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. This wasn't just a few missed payments. This was a landslide. The glossy, perfect life they had just paraded in front of 30 people was built on a foundation of debt that was crumbling in real time. Then I saw the thick packet. It was sitting slightly apart from the other papers, bound with a heavy metal clip. The cover page was thick, expensive stock. The logo at the top was an embossed gold shield with the words, Harbor Ridge Funding. I had never heard of Harbor Ridge Funding. It didn't sound like a bank. It sounded like one of those private equity firms that advertise on late-night television, the ones that offer solutions for people who have been rejected by everyone else. I opened the packet. It was a loan agreement, a high-interest, short-term bridge loan for $250,000. The terms were predatory. The interest rate was nearly 20%. It was the kind of loan you only took if you were drowning and needed air at any cost. I flipped to the signature page, my fingers trembling. My father's signature was there, bold and aggressive, but it was the co-signer line that stopped my breath. I expected to see my mother's name, or maybe even a business partner, but the name typed under the secondary signature line was Evelyn Ward, Grandma. I froze. Grandma Evelyn had been in assisted living for 6 months. She had suffered a series of mini-strokes that made her hands shake so badly she couldn't hold a spoon, let alone sign a complex legal document. I looked at the signature above her typed name. It was perfect. It was a smooth, elegant script with a slight flourish at the end of the D. It looked exactly like Grandma's signature from 10 years ago, before the arthritis and the strokes took their toll. It looked too perfect. I felt a cold prickle of sweat break out on the back of my neck. I flipped back to the collateral section of the loan, listed clearly. In black and white was the address. 442 Maple Drive, Grandma Evelyn's house. The house she had lived in for 50 years, the house she had sworn she would never sell, the house she wanted to leave as a sanctuary for the family. They had put it up as collateral for a high-interest loan. I looked at the date next to the signature, November 12th. I closed my eyes, doing the mental math. November 12th, that was 2 weeks ago. Grandma had been in the hospital then. She had been heavily medicated for a lung infection. I had visited her that day. She barely knew who I was. There was absolutely no way she had read, understood, and signed this document. My stomach turned over. This wasn't just bad money management. This was fraud. This was elder abuse. Suddenly, the joke of the lottery ticket didn't feel like a joke anymore. It felt like a distraction. The $12,000 cruise for Sabrina wasn't a gift. It was a bribe. Or maybe it was a frantic attempt to keep up appearances, to keep Sabrina and Gavin happy and looking the other way while the ship went down. They were drowning, and they were using Grandma's life raft to keep themselves afloat for just a little longer. And me? I was the independent one, the one they didn't have to worry about, the one they could mock and discard because I wasn't part of the financial ecosystem they were desperately trying to protect. Their favoritism wasn't just cruelty, it was fear management. They pushed me away because if I got too close, if I started asking questions, I might see the cracks. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, confident strides. Gavin. Panic surged through me. If he found me here. Looking at these papers, the game was over before it started. I pulled my phone from my back pocket. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be steady. I didn't use the flash. I held the phone over the documents and snapped pictures. Click. The overdue notices. Click. The Harbor Ridge cover page. Click. The loan amount. Click. The collateral address. And finally, the signature. I took 3 photos of that signature, zooming in on the unnatural smoothness of the ink. I shoved the papers back into their chaotic piles. Trying to make them look exactly as I had found them, I slipped the phone back into my pocket just as the doorknob began to turn. I didn't think. I dove toward the closet, grabbing a roll of black trash bags. Just as the door swung open, Gavin stood in the doorway. He was holding a tumbler of scotch. His tie loosened. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What are you doing in here, Camille?" he asked. His voice wasn't slurred, but it had the hard edge of alcohol behind it. I held up the trash bags, forcing a look of dull exhaustion onto my face. "Dad said there were more bags in here. The kitchen trash is overflowing." Gavin stared at me for a long second. He looked around the room, his gaze lingering on the desk, then snapping back to me. He took a sip of his drink. "You really are the perfect little worker bee, aren't you?" he sneered. "Always cleaning up everyone else's mess." "Someone has to," I said, my voice flat. He laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Yeah, I guess someone does. Better you than me." He stepped aside, letting me pass. I walked out of the study, my heart thudding against my ribs so hard I thought he must hear it. I didn't go back to the kitchen. I walked straight to the back door. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't get my coat. I stepped out into the cool November night, the air biting through my thin sweater. I walked to my car, got in, and locked the doors. Only then did I let out the breath I had been holding for 20 minutes. I drove. I didn't go straight home. I drove aimlessly through the dark streets of Charleston, the streetlights blurring into streaks of amber. The $2 ticket was still in my pocket. I could feel it there, a tiny weight against my hip. But the real jackpot wasn't the lottery. It was the information burning a hole in my phone. I finally pulled into my apartment complex around midnight. My place was small, a one-bedroom walk-up that my mother called quaint with a sneer. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, sliding down until I hit the floor. The silence of my apartment was different from the silence in the study. It was safe. I pulled the ticket out of my pocket. I smoothed out the wrinkles on the floorboards. I didn't check the numbers. Not yet. I couldn't process that possibility right now. My mind was stuck on one thing, Grandma Evelyn. I closed my eyes and replayed the moment in the hallway. The grip of her hand, the desperation in her eyes, the whisper I had almost missed. "Call Malcolm." At the time, I thought she was confused. I thought she was asking for my grandfather, whose name was Michael. But now, in the quiet of my living room, the pieces slammed together. She hadn't said Michael. She had said Malcolm. She knew. She knew what they had done. She was trapped in that facility. Her voice weak, her body failing, but her mind was still sharp enough to know she had been robbed, and she had tried to tell me the only way she could. I scrambled up from the floor and grabbed my laptop. I sat on my couch, not even bothering to turn on the lights. the screen glowing blue in the darkness. I typed into the search bar, Malcolm Attorney Charleston. A dozen results popped up. Malcolm is a common name. I refined it. Grandma was old school. She wouldn't hire a billboard lawyer. She would hire someone established, someone with gravitas. I typed, Malcolm Hart Attorney. The first result was a website for a firm. Hart, Sterling and Associates. I clicked on the profile. Malcolm Hart, senior partner, specializing in estate planning, elder law, and high-stakes litigation. There was a photo. He was an older man, silver-haired, with kind but serious eyes and a jawline that suggested he didn't suffer fools. I read his bio. Dedicated to protecting the legacy and rights of families for over 40 years. I sat back. This was him. This was the man Grandma Evelyn wanted me to find. She didn't want a doctor. She wanted a lawyer. I looked at the clock on my laptop. It was 1 a.m. on Friday. The office would open in 8 hours. I looked down at the lottery ticket on the coffee table. Then I looked at the phone where the photos of the forged documents were hidden. My family thought they had broken me tonight. They thought they had put me in my place. They thought I was just Camille, the independent disappointment, the girl who would fade into the background and clean up their messes. They were wrong. I wasn't just the help anymore. I was the witness. And tomorrow morning, I was going to make the first move. I didn't sleep. I sat there in the dark, watching the sun slowly turn the sky from black to gray, plotting the destruction of the people who raised me, one document at a time. The ticket lay there, unchecked, a silent promise of a future I wasn't even sure I had won yet. But it didn't matter. Even if that ticket was worth $0, I had enough ammunition to burn their house down. When the sun finally broke over the horizon, painting my living room in pale morning light, I picked up the ticket. I walked to the kitchen counter and poured myself a cup of cold coffee from yesterday. It was time to check the numbers. It was time to see if the universe was as angry as I was. The sun was fully up now, casting long, sharp shadows across my small kitchen counter. My coffee was cold, a dark, stagnant pool in a chipped mug I had bought at a thrift store 3 years ago. I stared at the liquid, watching a speck of dust float on the surface, postponing the moment I had to actually move. My head was throbbing, a dull, rhythmic ache behind my eyes that was less about a hangover and more about the sheer emotional dehydration of the last 12 hours. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. It felt heavy, like a brick. I swiped the screen on, the brightness stinging my eyes, and opened the browser. I didn't type in the news site immediately. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to just throw the ticket in the trash and go back to bed. Checking it felt like participating in their joke. If I checked it and lost, which I inevitably would, it would be the final punchline. See? Even when you try, you lose. But my thumb moved on its own. I typed in the state lottery website. The page loaded slowly, spinning a little blue circle that mocked my patience. The winning numbers for the November 27th drawing appeared in bold, black font against a white background. 4, 12, 26, 31, 45, and the mega ball was 9. I looked down at the pink slip of thermal paper on the counter. The wrinkles from my father's pocket were deep, cutting across the printed ink like scars. My eyes scanned the first line. 4. Okay, that was a coincidence. A small statistical anomaly. 12. My breath hitched. Just a little. A small hiccup of air in my throat. 26. I put the coffee mug down. I did it slowly, deliberately, because my hands suddenly felt like they didn't belong to me. They felt numb, distant. 31, 45. I stopped. The room went absolutely silent. The hum of the refrigerator, the traffic outside, the ticking of the clock. It all just vanished. There was only the sound of blood rushing in my ears. A roaring ocean wave that threatened to pull me under. I looked at the final number on the ticket, the mega ball. 9. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes, hard, until stars danced in my vision, and I looked again. The numbers didn't change. They sat there, immutable, indifferent to my heart rate, which had just skyrocketed to something dangerous. I sat down on the floor. I didn't faint. but my legs simply decided they were done holding me up. I sat on the cold linoleum, my back against the dishwasher, and I stared at the cabinet opposite me. I pulled the browser down to refresh the page. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe it was a cached error. The numbers stayed the same. And right below them, the estimated jackpot value, $100 million. $100 million. I said the words out loud, but no sound came out. My lips just moved around the shapes of the syllables. People always tell you how they would react if they won the lottery. They say they would scream. They would call their mom. They would pop champagne. They would dance on the table. I did none of those things. I went perfectly still. I felt like a prey animal that has just sensed a predator in the tall grass. This wasn't joy. This wasn't elation. This was terror. $100 million wasn't just money. In my family, money was ammunition. It was the currency of control. If my father knew I had this ticket, he wouldn't just ask for a share. He would sue me for it. He would claim he bought it. He would claim I stole it. He would claim he gave it to me for safekeeping. Gavin would be at my door within the hour with a team of financial advisors and a power of attorney document, smiling that shark smile. I looked at the door of my apartment. It was locked. I got up, walked over, and checked the deadbolt. Then I checked the chain. Then I went to the window and closed the blinds, tilting the slats so no one could see in. I was in survival mode. I needed to tell someone. The urge was physical, a pressure in my chest. I wanted to call my best friend from college, Sarah. But then a thought stopped me cold. Sarah had student loans. Sarah had credit card debt. If I told her, the dynamic would change instantly. I wouldn't be Camille anymore. I would be a walking bank vault. I couldn't tell anyone, not a soul. I paced the length of my small living room. 4 steps forward, turn, 4 steps back. I needed help, not the kind of help my family offered, which always came with strings that turned into nooses. I needed professional help. I needed a wall. I thought about the night before. Grandma Evelyn's hand on my wrist. Call Malcolm. I had searched for him to save Grandma. But now, looking at that ticket, I realized I needed him to save me, too. I sat back down at my laptop. The search tab was still open from the night before. Malcolm Hart, attorney at law. I stared at his phone number. It was Saturday morning now. The office would be closed, but the website listed an emergency line for urgent custodial matters. I dialed the number. My hand was shaking so bad I had to use 2 hands to hold the phone to my ear. It rang once, twice. Hart speaking. The voice was gravelly, deep, and awake. He sounded like a man who didn't do weekends off. Mr. Hart? My voice sounded foreign, thin and reedy. My name is Camille Thompson. I need legal representation. I don't take walk-ins on Saturdays. Ms. Thompson, he said, his tone professional but dismissive. Call the office on Monday. Evelyn Ward told me to call you, I blurted out. The line went dead silent, the kind of silence where you can hear the other person thinking. Evelyn? His voice changed. The dismissal was gone, replaced by a sharp alertness. You're Evelyn's granddaughter? The one she was asking for? Yes, I said. She whispered your name to me last night, but that's not the only reason I'm calling. Something happened. Something happened last night. Is she safe? He asked immediately. Did they move her? She's safe for now, I said. But Mr. Hart, I have a situation, a financial situation, and I think it connects to why my family is doing what they're doing to her. I need to know if I can trust you. I need to know attorney-client privilege starts right now, this second. If you are retaining me. Everything you say is sealed, Malcolm said. Talk to me. I looked at the pink slip of paper on the counter. I have a lottery ticket, I whispered. From last night, the Mega Millions. Okay, he said slowly. And I matched all 6 numbers. Silence again, longer this time. Are you holding the ticket right now? He asked. His voice had dropped to a whisper, urgent and commanding. Yes, it's on my counter. Listen to me very carefully. Camille, Malcolm said. Do not sign the back of it yet. Do not tell a soul, not your parents, not a boyfriend, not a roommate. Do you understand? I haven't told anyone, I said. Good. Is the ticket secure? It's on my counter. Put it in a plastic bag. Put that bag inside a book. Put the book somewhere boring. Do you have a safe? No. Okay. We need to get that ticket into a safety deposit box at a bank that your family does not use. Today, most main branches have Saturday hours until noon. Go there immediately. Do not pass go. Do not stop for gas. Okay, I said, my heart pounding. Mr. Hart, is this real? It is real if you protect it, he said. If you make a mistake now, you lose it. Your family. Evelyn has been trying to reach you for 3 months. Camille, ever since she got out of the hospital. Why? I asked. Why couldn't she call me? Because they took her phone, Malcolm said. The anger in his voice was palpable now. And because she knew they were monitoring her calls, she managed to get a message to my secretary a week ago. But we couldn't find you. Your parents told the hospital you were out of the country. I gripped the phone tighter. They told people I was out of the country? They told a lot of people a lot of things, Malcolm said. There was a filing. Camille, about 2 weeks ago, a modification to her estate trust. It was filed while she was heavily medicated for pneumonia. I've been trying to challenge it, but without her direct testimony or a family member to advocate for her, my hands have been tied. I've been waiting for you. I felt a cold chill wash over me. The loan documents I had seen in my father's study, the signature that looked too perfect, the date, November 12th. I saw something last night, I said, my voice trembling. In my father's study, I saw loan papers, co-signed by Grandma, but she couldn't have signed them. We need to meet, Malcolm said. Not on the phone. This is too sensitive. Can you get to my office in an hour? I'll unlock the side door. Yes, I said. And Camille, he added, his voice dropping again. Do not mention my name to your parents. Do not mention the ticket. Act normal. If they smell money, they will come for you with everything they have. And if they know you are talking to me, they will accelerate whatever they are doing with Evelyn's assets. I understand, I said. 1 hour, he said. And Camille? Congratulations. Your life just changed. Try to survive the transition. He hung up. I stood there for a moment, listening to the dial tone. Then I moved fast. I grabbed a Ziploc bag from the drawer. I placed the ticket inside with the reverence of a bomb disposal expert. I went to my bookshelf and pulled down a copy of Great Expectations. Ironic, I know. And slid the bag between the pages. I showered in 3 minutes flat. I dressed in jeans and a nondescript gray sweater. I pulled my hair back. I looked in the mirror. My face was pale. My eyes wide. I looked like someone who had seen a ghost. I pinched my cheeks to bring some color back. Neutral. I told my reflection, be neutral. I drove to the bank first, a branch across town where I knew no one. I opened a safety deposit box. I placed the book inside. The steel click of the lock turning was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. Then I drove to Hart. Sterling and Associates. The office was in an old brownstone in the historic district, discreet and expensive. Malcolm Hart met me at the side door. He was shorter than I expected, but he was built like a bulldog. Broad shoulders, a thick neck, and eyes that didn't miss a thing. He ushered me into a conference room that smelled of old books and lemon polish. We spent the next 2 hours mapping out a war plan. You cannot claim this money as Camille Thompson, Malcolm said, pacing the room. If your name hits the Lottery Commission's press release, your father will have a lawsuit filed before the check clears, in South Carolina. You can remain anonymous, but we need to structure it correctly. How? I asked. We create a trust, he explained. A blind trust. The trust claims the ticket. You are the beneficiary of the trust. To the public, the winner is just a legal entity. To your family, you are just Camille, the broke daughter. I want that, I said. I want them to know nothing. We'll call it. He paused, looking at me. Do you have a name in mind? Something that means nothing to them, but something to you? I thought about the dahlias I had grown. I thought about the trees in Grandma's backyard, the big cedars where I used to hide when my parents were fighting. Cedar lace, I said. Cedar for the trees, lace for the fragility of it all. Cedar Lace Holdings, Malcolm nodded, writing it down on a yellow legal pad. It sounds boring. Boring is good. He looked up at me, his pen hovering. Now, about the other matter, the loan. I pulled out my phone. I opened the gallery and slid it across the mahogany table. Malcolm put on a pair of reading glasses and leaned in. He scrolled through the photos I had taken in the study. He didn't speak for a long time. He just zoomed in, scrolled, zoomed in again. When he finally looked up, his face was hard. "This is sloppy," he said softly. "Arrogant and sloppy. They didn't even try to hide the date conflict." "Is it enough?" I asked. "Is it enough to stop them?" "It is enough to start a war," Malcolm said. "This is fraud. Camille, bank fraud, elder abuse, identity theft. If we drop this on them now, they go to prison." I sat back. Prison. My parents. My sister. "But," Malcolm continued, "if we play this wrong, they will destroy the evidence before we can subpoena the originals. They will claim you planted it. They will claim Evelyn had a moment of lucidity. They will muddy the waters. So what do? We wait," Malcolm said. "We let the lottery claim process move forward in the shadows. We secure the money, and while we do that, we build the case for Evelyn. We need the medical records. We need the nurse's notes from that week. We need a forensic handwriting expert." He leaned forward. "This money gives you something you have never had. Camille, it gives you the ability to outweight them. Litigation is expensive. It bleeds people dry. Your father is already bleeding. That's why he took this loan. If we drag this out, if we block the sale of the house, if we freeze the assets, he collapses." I looked at the yellow pad where he had written Cedar Lace Holdings. "Leverage," I said softly. "Exactly," Malcolm said. "You have the ultimate leverage, but only if they don't know you have it." I drove home as the afternoon sun began to dip low in the sky. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was a text from the family group chat. "Mom, hope you had a safe drive home. Don't forget, we need you to come over Tuesday to help pack the silver for storage before the cruise. Sabrina. And I need my green dress back, the one you borrowed 3 years ago." I stared at the screen. Yesterday, these messages would have made me feel small. They would have made me feel used. But today, they looked different. They looked like evidence. I didn't reply. I just tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. That night, I sat on my balcony, wrapped in a blanket, looking out at the city lights. I thought about the ticket sitting in the dark of the safety deposit box. $100 million. It was enough to buy an island. It was enough to never work again. But that wasn't what I wanted. I thought about Grandma Evelyn, sitting in her wheelchair, squeezing my hand. I thought about the independent label they slapped on me like a warning sticker. I thought about the $2 ticket and the laughter. The money wasn't a ticket to a luxury life. It was a sword. And for the first time in my life, I was holding the hilt. My family thought they were playing a game of chess where I was just a pawn. They didn't know that while they were busy looking at cruise brochures, I had just bought the entire board. I took a sip of wine. It was cheap wine, the kind I usually bought, but tonight, it tasted like victory. "Okay," I whispered to the empty air. "Let's play." Tuesday afternoon arrived with a sky the color of a bruised plum, heavy with rain that refused to fall. I parked my car 3 blocks away from the daily grind, a small, slightly run-down cafe on the edge of town that smelled permanently of burnt beans and damp wool. It was the kind of place my mother would never set foot in, which made it the perfect place to meet Aunt Denise. I saw her before she saw me. She was sitting in a booth at the very back, her hands wrapped around a ceramic mug, as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the earth. Denise Carver had always been the quiet sister, the one who lived in the shadow of my mother's loud, performative personality. But looking at her now, through the fogged-up glass of the cafe window, she looked older than her 55 years. Her shoulders were hunched, and there was a tightness around her mouth that spoke of secrets kept for too long. I walked in. The bell above the door chiming with a cheerful sound that felt entirely inappropriate. When I slid into the booth opposite her, she jumped, coffee sloshing over the rim of her mug. "Camille," she breathed, grabbing a napkin to dab at the spill. "You came. You said it was urgent," I said, keeping my voice low. "And after that look you gave me at Thanksgiving, I figured you weren't asking me here to exchange knitting patterns." Denise looked around the cafe. It was mostly empty, save for a student with headphones and a truck driver eating a bagel. But she leaned in anyway, lowering her voice to a whisper. "I saw you go into the study," she said. My stomach dropped. I kept my face impassive, remembering Malcolm's warning. "I was getting trash bags." "Don't," Denise cut me off. Her eyes were pleading. "Please don't lie to me. I saw you go in. I saw Gavin go in after you. And I saw the look on your face when you came out. You saw the papers, didn't you?" I stared at her. Denise had always been kind to me. In her passive way, she used to sneak me extra dessert when my mother put me on diets I didn't need. But kindness wasn't the same as an alliance. "What papers?" I asked, testing the waters. "The loan," Denise whispered. "Harbor Ridge funding, the one tied to Evelyn's house." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. She knew. "How do you know about that?" I asked. Denise let go of the mug and clasped her hands together on the table. Her knuckles were white. "Because your father asked me for money first. 6 months ago, he asked me for $50,000. He said it was for a cash flow issue with the business. I told him I didn't have that kind of liquidity. 2 weeks later, he showed up driving a new lease, and Sabrina was talking about renovations on her kitchen. So he found the money somewhere else," I said. "He didn't find it," Denise said darkly. "Gavin brought it to him." She reached into her oversized handbag and pulled out a manila envelope. She didn't open it yet. She just rested her hand on it. "Camille, you need to understand something. This isn't just about one bad loan. This has been rotting from the inside out for years. Your parents, they haven't been solvent since 2018. "That is impossible," I argued, though I knew it wasn't. "The cars, the parties, the clothes." "Debt," Denise said flatly. "All of it. They have been shuffling credit cards and refinancing properties for 8 years. But they ran out of road. Your father's business has been in the red for 3 years. He keeps it open just to maintain the appearance of income. But it is hemorrhaging cash." And that is where Gavin stepped in. "Gavin is in finance," I said, repeating the family line. "He is an investment banker." Denise let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Gavin is not a banker. Gavin is a facilitator. He works on the fringes of private equity. He connects desperate people with predatory lenders who don't ask questions about income-to-debt ratios as long as there is hard collateral." "Collateral like Grandma's house," I said, the anger rising in my chest again. "Exactly." Denise nodded. "But it is worse than that. I did some digging. I have a friend who works in credit reporting, an old boyfriend from college. I asked him to run a soft check on some names, just to see how deep the hole was." She slid the envelope across the table. "Open it." I opened the clasp and pulled out a stack of printed screenshots and credit reports. The first page was a credit summary, but the name at the top wasn't my father. It was Sabrina Thompson Rourke. I scanned the numbers. It was a disaster zone. There were 5 credit cards maxed out, personal lines of credit opened and drained. But what caught my eye were the dates. "These accounts were opened 3 years ago," I said. "Sabrina has always been terrible with money. But this? Look at the contact email on the accounts," Denise pointed out. I looked. It wasn't Sabrina's email. It was a string of letters and numbers at a secure domain I didn't recognize. "That is not Sabrina," Denise said. "I asked her about a charge once, casually. She had no idea what I was talking about. She thinks Gavin handles all their finances. She signs whatever he puts in front of her. She thinks she is living the high life on his salary. I looked up at Denise, my mind reeling. Are you saying Gavin is using Sabrina's identity to take out loans? I am saying Gavin is using everyone, Denise hissed. He maxed out Sabrina, then he moved to your father. And now that your father is tapped out, they moved to the only asset left with any real equity, Evelyn. I sat back against the vinyl booth. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. I had spent my entire life being jealous of Sabrina. I thought she was the princess. I thought she had the perfect husband, the perfect life, the perfect luck. But she wasn't the princess. She was the host organism. Gavin was a parasite, and he had been slowly draining her dry while she preened for the cameras. Does she know? I asked. I don't think so, Denise said. She is so desperate to believe the fairy tale. If she admits the money isn't real, she has to admit her life isn't real. And you know Sabrina, she would rather die than look poor. So she is a victim, I said, the words tasting strange in my mouth. She is a victim who is happy to benefit from the crime as long as she doesn't have to see the blood. Denise corrected me. Don't make her a saint. Camille. She mocked you at that table just as loud as the rest of them. But she is not the mastermind. Gavin is. Denise leaned forward again, her voice dropping even lower. I saw something. Camille, about a month ago, I was dropping off a casserole at your parents' house. I pulled into the driveway, but I didn't get out because I saw Gavin standing by the garage. There was a black sedan parked there. A man got out. He didn't look like a banker. He looked rough. He handed Gavin a bag, a canvas zipper bag, like the kind businesses use for bank drops. Cash? I asked. I think so, Denise said. Gavin took the bag and shook the man's hand, but it wasn't a handshake. It was a grip. The man said something to him, and Gavin looked scared. I have never seen Gavin look scared. He usually looks so smug, but in that driveway, he looked terrified. So he owes money to dangerous people, I concluded. And he is stripping the family assets to pay them back. That is my theory, Denise said. Harbor Ridge funding might be a legitimate front, but the people behind it, or the people Gavin is dealing with on the side, they are not the kind of people you want to miss a payment with. She pulled out her phone. And then there is this. I was sitting next to Gavin on the sofa before dinner yesterday. He left his phone on the armrest when he went to the bathroom. A text came in. I took a picture of it. She turned the phone screen toward me. It was a photo of a locked iPhone screen, but the message preview was visible. Sender. Unknown message. 24 hours. Close the house file, or we bypass you and go to the old lady directly. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty cafe. Close the house file, I repeated. That means the loan on Grandma's house. They need the deed recorded. And go to the old lady directly, Denise added. That is a threat. Camille, they are threatening to go to the nursing home, to harass Evelyn, or worse. I gripped the edge of the table. The image of Grandma Evelyn, frail and defenseless in her bed, flashed through my mind. These people, whoever they were, didn't care that she was sick. They didn't care that she was someone's grandmother. To them, she was just an obstacle between them and their money. We have to stop him, I said, my voice shaking with rage. We have to call the police. With what proof? Denise asked wearily. A text message I stole? A signature you think is forged? Gavin will spin it. He will say he is managing the estate. He will say he has power of attorney. He is charming. Camille, and the police? They will call it a civil matter. It is not a civil matter, I snapped. It is theft. I know, Denise said. But if you confront him now, without a smoking gun, he will pivot. He won't panic. He will calculate. He will destroy the evidence. He will transfer the deed to a shell company in the Cayman Islands before you can file a motion. He is 3 steps ahead of us. She reached out and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was cold. I am telling you this because you are the only one who isn't compromised, Denise said. Your father is complicit because he is desperate. Sabrina is blind, but you are on the outside. You have always been on the outside. Finally, a benefit to being the black sheep, I said bitterly. You need to be careful, Denise warned. If Gavin realizes you saw those documents in the study, he will come for you. He will try to discredit you. He will try to make you look crazy or jealous. He did it at dinner. Never having luck or leverage, he was positioning you, making sure no one would believe you if you spoke up. I thought about the lottery ticket. I thought about Malcolm Hart and the trust we were building. Cedar Lace Holdings. Denise didn't know I had the ultimate leverage. She didn't know I had a nuclear option sitting in a bank vault. I am not afraid of Gavin, I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. He thinks he is playing poker with people who are bluffing. He doesn't know I'm holding 4 aces. Denise looked at me, confusion knitting her brows. What do you mean? I mean I have a plan. I lied. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. The circle of trust had to remain small. Just me and Malcolm. But I need you to do something for me. Aunt Denise, can you keep watching him? Can you be my eyes in that house? I can try, Denise said. But they are leaving for the cruise in 2 days. Good, I said. Let them go. Let them get on that ship. Let them think everything is handled. While they are drinking Mai Tais and congratulating themselves, I am going to be working. I looked at the text message photo one more time. Close the house file. They want the house, I said softly. But they are not going to get it, and they are not going to get Grandma. I stood up. I felt different than I had when I walked in. I wasn't just investigating a crime anymore. I was preparing for an execution. Not a physical one, but a dismantling. I was going to take apart Gavin's life piece by piece. I was going to expose the rot in my parents' marriage. I was going to show Sabrina exactly who she was sleeping next to. Camille, Denise said, looking up at me. Why are you doing this? After how they treated you? You could just walk away. You could let them crash and burn. I could, I said. And part of me wants to. But Grandma Evelyn gave me the only love I ever felt in that family. And I will burn the whole world down before I let them take her home. I threw a $20 bill on the table for the coffee. Stay safe, Aunt Denise, I said. And if Gavin asks, you haven't seen me. I am just the invisible girl, remember? Too busy and too broke to matter. I walked out of the cafe and into the rain. The water felt cool on my face. I got into my car and locked the door. My mission had changed. This morning, I wanted to win. I wanted to claim my money and disappear. I wanted to build a wall and hide behind it. But now? Now I knew the truth. My sister wasn't just a villain. She was a casualty. My father wasn't just a jerk. He was a desperate man being blackmailed by his own son-in-law. And Gavin was a monster disguised in a bespoke suit. I wasn't just going to win, I was going to end the cycle. I was going to use my $100 million to buy a wrecking ball, and I was going to swing it straight at the foundation of lies they had built their lives on. I pulled out my phone and dialed Malcolm. Hart speaking. It's Camille, I said. I just got more information. We need to accelerate the timeline. What did you find? Malcolm asked. Gavin Rourke is borrowing from loan sharks, I said, and he is using my sister's identity to do it. The house isn't just collateral for a bank loan. It is blood money. I see, Malcolm said, his voice hardening. Then we don't just file a challenge. We file a forensic audit. Do it, I said. And Malcolm? I want to hire a private investigator. I want to know who that man in the black sedan was. I want to know exactly who owns Harbor Ridge Funding. Use the trust's money. I don't care what it costs. Consider it done, Malcolm said. I hung up and put the car in gear. The rain was coming down harder now, washing the grime off the city streets. I turned on my wipers. The rhythmic thwack thwack, sounding like a metronome. Tick, tock. The clock was ticking for Gavin Rourke. He thought he had 24 hours to close the file. He was wrong. He had 24 hours until I became his worst nightmare. The smell of the assisted living facility was a specific cocktail of aggressive lemon floor cleaner, boiled carrots, and the dusty scent of potpourri that hadn't been changed in a decade. It was the smell of waiting. I walked down the long, beige hallway of the Whispering Pines Care Center, my sneakers squeaking faintly on the linoleum. It was late afternoon, the time of day when the energy in these places dips low, the televisions blaring game shows in empty common rooms, while nurses did their rounds with medication carts. Room 304 was at the end of the hall. The door was cracked open. I pushed it gently and stepped inside. Grandma Evelyn was sitting in her recliner by the window, staring out at the parking lot. The gray light from the overcast sky washed over her, making her look incredibly small. She was wrapped in a knitted afghan I recognized, one she had made herself 20 years ago, a chaotic pattern of mismatched blues and greens. Her hands, resting on her lap, looked like bundles of fragile twigs. She didn't turn when I entered. For a second, a terrifying thought seized me, that I was too late, that the stress had finally snapped the last thread holding her here. "Grandma?" I whispered. Her head turned slowly. Her silver hair was thin, showing the pink scalp beneath. But when her eyes locked onto mine, the relief hit me like a physical blow. They were bright. They were lucid. They were the same sharp, assessing eyes that used to catch me trying to sneak an extra cookie before dinner. "Camille," she said. Her voice was rough, like gravel tumbling in a dryer, but it was steady. "You are here." I crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt beside her chair, taking her cold hands in mine. "I'm here. I came as soon as I could." She squeezed my fingers. Her grip was weaker than it had been on Thanksgiving, but the intent was there. She pulled me closer, her eyes searching my face, scanning for damage. "Did you do it?" she asked. "Did you find him?" I nodded, keeping my voice low so it wouldn't carry into the hallway. "I found him. I met with Malcolm Hart on Saturday morning." The tension went out of her body all at once. Her shoulders dropped. She let out a long, shuddering exhale that sounded like a tire finally losing its air. It was the sound of a woman who had been holding a heavy door shut against a hurricane and had finally found someone to help her turn the lock. "Thank God," she breathed. "Thank God. I thought maybe I had imagined him, or that he had retired, or died." "He is very much alive," I said, a small smile touching my lips. "And he is angry, Grandma. He is very angry about what is happening." Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment. "He was always a bulldog. That is why I liked him. Your grandfather was too nice. Malcolm knew how to bite." She opened her eyes again, and the look she gave me was filled with a sudden, fierce clarity. "They made me sign, Camille." I froze. I had suspected it. Malcolm had suspected it. But hearing her say it, confirming the nightmare scenario I had pieced together from stolen documents, made my blood run cold. "Tell me," I said softly. "Tell me exactly what you remember." Evelyn looked out the window again, her brow furrowing as she tried to pull the memory through the fog of trauma and medication. "I fell," she said, "in the bathroom. It was stupid. I slipped. They took me to the hospital. My hip hurt so much. They gave me shots, painkillers, strong ones. The world was swimming. It felt like I was underwater." She paused, swallowing hard. I reached for the plastic cup of water on her tray table and held the straw to her lips. She took a small sip. 2 days later," she continued, "I was still in the hospital bed. A woman came in. I didn't know her. She had a clipboard and a very stiff suit. She looked like a school principal. And he was with her." "Who?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "Gavin," she spat the name. "He was smiling, that terrible, shiny smile. He was holding my hand. He kept patting it. He told me, 'Don't worry, Evelyn. We are just handling the insurance. We need to move some assets around to protect the house so the hospital doesn't take it. It is just paperwork for safety.'" "Safety," I repeated, the word tasting like ash, I told him I wanted to read it, Evelyn said, her voice rising slightly with agitation. I told him I needed my glasses, but he said there wasn't time. He said the billing department was coming in an hour. He put the pen in my hand. He guided my hand to the line. He said, "Trust me, Evelyn, do it for the family." She looked at me, her eyes wet. I signed. I was so tired. Camille. And I was so scared of losing the house. He used my fear against me. "It wasn't your fault," I said fiercely, squeezing her hands. "You were drugged. You were coerced. That signature is worth less than the paper it is written on." "It is worse," she whispered. "It is not just the loan." She leaned in closer, pulling me into her conspiracy. "Years ago," she said, "after your grandfather died, I went to Malcolm. I made a new will. A private trust." I frowned. "I thought Mom was the executor." "Your mother," Evelyn said, a sad, knowing look crossing her face, "has a hole in her hand. She has always had it. Money goes in, and it disappears. She buys things to fill up the empty spaces inside her. I knew if I left the house and the savings to her, it would be gone in 5 years. She would sell the land to developers and buy more cars." Evelyn took a breath. I bypassed her. "Camille, the house, the bonds, the remaining savings, it is all in a trust, and the beneficiary of that trust is you." I stared at her. The room seemed to tilt slightly. "Me?" I whispered. "You were the only one who ever watered the garden," she said simply. "You were the only one who ever asked me about my life, not just my bank account. You are the only one who knows the value of a thing isn't the price tag." "Does Mom know?" "No. That is why they are panicking. That is why Gavin is trying to leverage the house now, while I am still alive. Because he suspects. He knows he can't get to the equity once I am gone. So he is trying to steal it while I'm still breathing." She gripped my arm, her fingers digging into my sweater. "Malcolm has the proof. He has the sealed folder. He has the witnesses from 10 years ago. But Camille, if we use it, if we challenge them, it will be war. They will drag you through the mud. They will say you manipulated me. They will say you are a gold digger. You have to be willing to fight your own parents, publicly." I looked at this woman, this frail, fierce woman who had tried to protect me from the grave before she was even in it. She was worried about me. She was worried about my reputation, while her own son-in-law was selling her home out from under her. I felt a strange calmness settle over me. It was the calm of the eye of the storm. "I am willing to fight," I said. "But Grandma, I need to tell you something I haven't told anyone. Not even Malcolm knows the whole truth yet." Evelyn watched me, sensing the shift in my tone. "What is it?" I looked at the door to make sure it was closed. Then I leaned in until our foreheads were almost touching. "You know that lottery ticket Dad gave me?" I whispered. "The $2 ticket?" Evelyn rolled her eyes. "A cruel joke, typical of them." "It wasn't a joke," I said. Evelyn froze. She stared at me. "I checked the numbers on Friday morning," I said, measuring every word. "I matched all 6 numbers." Evelyn didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "How much?" she whispered. $100 million, I said. "Before taxes." The silence in the room was absolute. The sounds of the nursing home, the cart rattling in the hall, the distant television, faded away. It was just the two of us, suspended in a moment that felt like a fracture in reality. Then, Evelyn started to shake. At first, I thought she was crying. I reached out to comfort her, but then I realized she was laughing. It wasn't a nice laugh. It wasn't a gentle, grandmotherly chuckle. It was a dry, raspy, hacking sound that came from deep in her chest. It was the sound of someone who had watched a tragedy play out for 50 years and suddenly realized it was actually a comedy. 100 million, she wheezed. clutching her chest. 100 million. She looked up at me, and her eyes were dancing with a fierce, vindictive delight. Well, she said, a sharp smile cutting across her face. The universe finally blinked. I have the ticket in a safety deposit box, I said. I am claiming it through a blind trust. Malcolm is setting it up. They won't know it is me. Not until I'm ready. Evelyn stopped laughing. She reached out and cupped my face in her hands. Her palms were dry and cool. Listen to me, she said. Her voice was suddenly serious, the laughter gone. This is dangerous. Camille, money like that, it is like radiation. It changes everything it touches. It reveals who people really are. I know, I said. I have seen what the lack of it did to them. I have seen what the want of it turned Gavin into. Promise me 2 things, Evelyn commanded. Anything. First, she said, save the house, not for me. I am old. I will die in this place or a hospital, but save the house because it is the only honest thing this family owns. Don't let Gavin turn it into a strip mall or a settlement payment for his gambling debts. I will, I promised. I will buy it outright if I have to. I will pave the driveway with gold if you want. No gold, she snapped. Just gravel. Gravel is honest. She took a breath. And the second thing, this is harder. Don't let the money turn you into them. I blinked. I would never. You think you wouldn't, she interrupted. But power is seductive, Camille. Revenge is seductive. It feels good to hurt people who hurt you. It feels righteous. But if you use this money to destroy them just for the sport of it, if you become cruel, then they win. Even if they are broke, they win. Because they made you into a monster just like them. I looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. Not for herself, but for my soul. She had watched her own daughter turn into a shallow, grasping creature. She didn't want to lose her granddaughter to the same disease. I took her hands and kissed the knuckles. I promise, I said. I won't become them. I won't be cruel. But as I said it, a dark thought uncoiled in the back of my mind. I wouldn't be cruel. Cruelty was messy. Cruelty was emotional. Cruelty was laughing at someone at a Thanksgiving dinner table. I wouldn't be that. I would be precise. I won't be cruel, I repeated. And I meant it. I will be justice. Evelyn looked at me for a long moment. She saw something in my eyes, something that made her nod slowly. Good, she said. Justice is expensive, but it seems you can finally afford it. We sat there for another hour, plotting. It wasn't a tender reunion anymore. It was a war council. We talked about dates. We talked about the names of the nurses who were on duty when she signed the papers. We talked about where she kept the spare key to the house so I could get in and document the condition of the property before Gavin tried to liquidate anything inside. When the nurse came in with dinner, a sad-looking tray of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, the atmosphere shifted back instantly. Evelyn became the frail old lady, and I became the dutiful granddaughter. Eat up, Mrs. Ward, the nurse said cheerfully. You need your strength. I am eating, Evelyn mumbled. Picking up her fork with a shaky hand, I stood up to leave. I will be back. Grandma, I have to go to work. You work too hard, she said. Playing her part. Be careful driving. I will. I walked to the door. Before I left, I turned back. Evelyn was watching me. She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible wink. I walked out of the rehab center and into the parking lot. The rain had stopped, and the air was crisp and cold. I sat in my car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I had promised not to be cruel. I thought about Gavin's smirk. I thought about my mother's dismissive wave. I thought about the independent label they used as an insult. I would keep my promise. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't make a scene. I wouldn't stoop to their level of petty insults and social climbing. My revenge wouldn't be chaos. Chaos was what they lived in. The scrambling for loans. The fake smiles. The panic behind the eyes. My revenge would be order. It would be legal filings. It would be forensic audits. It would be the undeniable, crushing weight of the truth. I started the engine. The radio came on, playing some upbeat pop song that felt miles away from where I was. I wasn't just Camille Thompson anymore. I was the CEO of Cedar Lace Holdings, and I had a hostile takeover to plan. I pulled out of the parking lot, merging into traffic. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. It was beautiful. It looked like the end of something, and the beginning of something else entirely. The Bon Voyage dinner was held on a Thursday night, 48 hours before my family was set to depart for their grand Caribbean escape. Ostensibly, it was a celebration of my mother's upcoming birthday and a farewell toast to the core family embarking on their journey. In reality, it was a logistical staging ground, and I had been conscripted as the ground crew. I arrived at my parents' house at 5 o'clock. Not as a guest, but as the unpaid event planner. My mother handed me a list before I had even closed the front door. Confirm the airport limousine. Check the centerpieces. Ensure the caterer knows Gavin has a sensitivity to cilantro. Print the boarding passes. I took the list without a word. A week ago, this would have made me feel small, a reminder of my permanent status as the afterthought. But tonight, as I walked through the house carrying a stack of cruise itineraries, I felt a strange, vibrating calm. I wasn't the help. I was a spy in the house of the enemy. The dining room was set for 12. My mother had invited a few neighbors and business associates to witness the spectacle of their success. It was all part of the theater. If you look rich enough, people stop asking why you haven't paid your bills. I was arranging the flowers in the center of the table, white lilies and hydrangeas, expensive and scentless. When Sabrina drifted in, she was holding a glass of Chardonnay, wearing a silk dress that shimmered like spilled oil. "You know," she said, leaning against the doorframe, watching me cut the stems. "I almost envy you sometimes, Camille." I didn't look up. "Is that so?" "Yeah," she sighed, taking a sip of wine. "It must be so simple, just playing with plants, no real responsibilities, no pressure. You get to just live in your little apartment and worry about, I don't know, soil pH or whatever. It is quaint." She called me the plant girl to her friends. I knew this. It was her way of reducing my freelance landscape design career to a hobby. Something a child would do in a sandbox. I placed a lily into the vase with surgical precision. "It has its moments," I said softly. "Plants are honest. If they are rotting at the roots, they don't try to hide it with a silk dress." Sabrina paused. She blinked, looking at me with a flicker of confusion. The comment was too sharp, too direct for the Camille she thought she knew, but then she laughed, dismissing it as a quirk. "You are so weird," she said. "Make sure you put the itineraries in the blue folder." "Gavin likes things organized." "I will," I said. "Gavin's organization is certainly impressive." Speaking of the devil, Gavin walked in a moment later. He was radiating that high-octane energy of a man who is running a con and thinks he is winning. He clapped his hands together, looking at the table. "Looks good. Camille," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "At least we can always count on you for the decorations." He moved to the sideboard to refill his drink, then turned back to me, a smirk playing on his lips. "So," he said, loud enough for the neighbors in the next room to hear, "buy any more lottery tickets lately? Or are you saving your $2 for something special?" The room went quiet. A few of the guests chuckled. It was the same joke from Thanksgiving. Recycled for a new audience. He was testing me. He wanted to see if I would snap, if I would cry, if I would give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I turned slowly. I wiped my hands on my apron. I looked him dead in the eye. "I haven't bought any more tickets, Gavin," I said. My voice was even, stripping the air of tension rather than adding to it. "I think one was enough. Luck surprises people when they least expect it." Gavin's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He was looking for shame in my eyes. But he found something else. He found a mirror. "Right," he muttered, turning back to his drink. "Well, Keep dreaming. I don't need to dream, I whispered to myself as I walked out of the room. I have a plan. And I did. While they were busy packing designer swimsuits and debating which sunscreen to bring, I had been busy building a fortress. Earlier that day, I had met Malcolm Hart in the back room of his office. The blinds were drawn. On the table between us sat a stack of documents that was 3 inches thick. This is the trust structure, Malcolm had explained, sliding a heavy binder toward me. Cedar Lace Holdings. It is registered in Delaware with a layer of anonymity that would make a CIA agent jealous. The trust claims the lottery ticket. You are the sole beneficiary. But your name appears on none of the public filing documents. As far as the world is concerned, a private entity won the jackpot. I traced the name on the cover page. Cedar Lace Holdings. It sounded corporate. It sounded boring. It sounded safe. And the ticket? I asked. Secured, Malcolm said. We moved it from your safety deposit box to a private vault this morning. The claim has been processed with the Lottery Commission. The funds will be wired to the trust's account within 10 business days. You are currently looking at a net worth of roughly $62 million after the federal and state tax bite. $62 million. It was a number so large it felt abstract, but the power it bought was very real. And the other matter? I asked. The investigation? Malcolm nodded. He reached for a second folder. This one was thinner, but far more dangerous. I hired a forensic document examiner, Malcolm said. A man named Silas Vance. He is the best in the state. He used to work for the FBI. I gave him the high-resolution photos you took of the loan documents and a sample of Evelyn's genuine signature from her old will. And he is ready to testify, Malcolm said. He identified 7 distinct points of inconsistency. The pen pressure is wrong, the loop on the Y is too aggressive, and there is a microscopic hesitation mark at the start of the first name. It is a simulation. Camille, a tracing, a very good one, but a fake. Can we prove who did it? Not yet, Malcolm admitted. But we can prove who didn't do it. Evelyn didn't do it. That was the first piece of the trap. The second piece I had secured myself. Just 2 hours before the dinner, I had gone back to the rehab center, ostensibly to bring Grandma Evelyn a fresh batch of laundry. But my real target was the nurse's station. I knew the head nurse, a stern but kindly woman named Mrs. Higgins, was on duty. I found her at the desk, sorting through files. Mrs. Higgins, I said, putting on my best worried granddaughter face. I am just so concerned about Grandma's memory. She seems so confused about what happened the week she was admitted to the hospital. She thinks people visited her who weren't there. Mrs. Higgins sighed, taking off her glasses. That is normal, honey. She was on a heavy dose of hydromorphone for the pain, plus the sedatives for the anxiety. That whole week is likely a blur for her. Is there any way I could just see the timeline? I asked innocently. Just to know when she was medicated, so I can help her separate dreams from reality? Mrs. Higgins hesitated. HIPAA laws were strict, but she knew me. I was the one who brought donuts. I was the one who sat for hours. I can't give you the file, she whispered, looking around. But if I were to leave her daily observation log open on the counter while I go check on room 304, and if you happen to glance at it, she winked and walked away. I didn't just glance. I pulled out my phone and photographed the log for November 12th. There it was, in black and white ink. November 12th, 2 p.m. Patient administered 2 milligrams hydromorphone. Patient drowsy. Disoriented. Oriented to name only. November 12th, 3:30 p.m. Visitors arrived, male and female. Patient agitated during visit. The loan documents were dated November 12th. The time stamp on the notary seal, which I had zoomed in on in my original photos, was 3:45 p.m. Grandma was legally incapacitated. She was high as a kite. She couldn't have consented to a pizza order, let alone a $250,000 mortgage lien. I had the forgery analysis. I had the medical timeline. I had the money coming to fund the war. The chessboard was set. All I had to do was wait for them to make their move. Back at the dinner party, The evening was winding down. The guests were leaving, filled with wine and envy. My parents were standing at the door, beaming, playing the perfect hosts. "Such a lovely send-off," my mother cooed, closing the door on the last neighbor. She turned to the room, her smile dropping instantly into a look of exhaustion. "Camille, help the caterers clear the dessert plates, and make sure the garbage goes out to the curb. The truck comes tomorrow morning." "Of course," I said. "Anything else?" "Just go home after that," my father said, loosening his tie. "We have an early flight. The limo is coming at 6 in the morning." "Have a wonderful trip," I said. "I really hope you get everything you deserve." My father looked at me sharply, trying to parse the tone, but I was already turning away. Picking up a stack of dirty plates, I finished the cleanup in silence. As I walked out to my car, carrying a bag of trash that weighed less than the secrets I was holding, I looked back at the house. It was lit up like a lantern in the dark street. It looked warm. It looked inviting. It was a house of cards, and the wind was picking up. The morning of the departure was gray and drizzly. I was awake at 5, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee, my phone on the table in front of me. I wasn't going to the airport. I wasn't part of the core family. I waited. 6 o'clock came and went. They would be in the limo now, drinking mimosas, taking selfies. 7 o'clock, arriving at the airport, checking bags. 10 o'clock, they would be in the air. I went about my day. I met with a client about a garden design. I bought groceries. I pretended to be normal. But at 4 in the afternoon, my phone rang. It was Sabrina. I stared at the screen. They should be landing in Miami now, getting ready to board the ship. I picked up. "Hello? Camille!" Sabrina's voice was high, tight, and bordering on hysterical. There was background noise, wind, seagulls, the murmur of a crowd. "Camille, are you home?" "Yes," I said calmly. "I'm home. Shouldn't you be boarding?" "We are at the terminal," she said, her voice cracking. There is a problem, a huge problem." "What kind of problem?" "The card," she hissed. "Gavin's card, the platinum one. It declined." I leaned back in my chair. "Declined? That is odd. Maybe it is a travel flag. Did he call the bank?" "He called," Sabrina practically shrieked. They said the account is frozen. Camille, it is humiliating. People are staring. We are at the VIP check-in and we can't pay the port fees and the deposit. The luggage is already on the ship." "That sounds stressful," I said. "Stressful? I am going to die of embarrassment." She took a breath, and her voice shifted. It became the voice she used when she wanted something. Sweet, wheedling. "Camille, listen. I need a favor. A big one. Can you transfer some money? Just to get us on board. Gavin will pay you back as soon as he sorts this out with the bank on Monday. It is just a glitch." "How much?" I asked. 5,000, she said. "Just to cover the hold and the fees?" $5,000? She was asking me, the plant girl, the broke sister, for $5,000 because her husband's house of lies had hit its first structural failure. I closed my eyes. I could picture the scene perfectly. Sabrina in her white linen suit, sweating through her makeup. Gavin shouting at a poor check-in agent, trying to bluff his way through a freeze order that was likely triggered by one of his many creditors finally pulling the plug. I could save them. I could transfer the money. It was pennies to me now. I could let them have their vacation. But Grandma Evelyn's voice echoed in my head. "Don't let the money turn you into the same kind of cruel. Refusing them wasn't cruel. Enabling them was—" "Camille?" Sabrina urged. "Are you there? Please, I will pay you back double." I opened my eyes. I looked at the rain streaking my window. "I can't help you." "Sabrina," I said. "What do you mean you can't? You have savings. I know you do." "I can't help you," I repeated, my voice ice cold. "But we are stuck," she screamed. "What am I supposed to do?" I let the silence hang for a second, heavy and electric. "Ask Gavin," I said. "What?" "Ask Gavin," I said again, enunciating every syllable. "He is the financial genius, isn't he? He is the one with the private equity connections. He is the expert." "Camille, don't be a bitch," she snapped. "This isn't the time for—" "It is exactly the time," I cut her off. "If his card is declined, Sabrina, maybe you should ask him why. Maybe you should ask him who he really banks with. Maybe you should ask him about the man in the black sedan." There was silence on the other end of the line. Total, shocked silence. The wind whistled in the background. "What? What did you say?" Sabrina whispered. "Ask him," I said. "And good luck with the cruise." I hung up. I stared at the phone. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. It was the recoil of the gun I had just fired. The illusion was wobbling. I had just planted the seed of doubt in the center of Sabrina's brain. She was stuck on a dock in Miami with a man whose credit just failed. And her sister had just implied he was a criminal. She wouldn't enjoy the cruise. She would spend every minute of the next 2 weeks wondering what I knew. She would watch Gavin. She would question him. The rot would spread from the inside. And while they were trapped at sea, isolated and paranoid, I would be here. I picked up my keys. I had a meeting with a locksmith. It was time to change the locks on Grandma Evelyn's house before they came back. The game had officially begun. Silence is not empty, it is heavy. It is filled with the things you are finally free to do when the people who suck the air out of the room are gone. For the first time in my life, Charleston felt like my city, my parents, my sister, and Gavin had managed to scramble onto that ship. I found out later that Gavin had made a frantic, shouting phone call on the dock, likely to the very people he should have been running from, and miraculously, a different credit card had cleared the charges. They were now trapped in the middle of the Caribbean, surrounded by turquoise water and an unlimited buffet, likely pretending that they weren't drowning in debt. They were geographically contained, and I was loose. I moved with the speed of a woman who knows the clock is ticking. The moment their flight took off, I was at Malcolm Hart's office. "We have the nurse," Malcolm said the moment I walked in. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He slid a piece of paper across his desk. It was a sworn affidavit. "Mrs. Higgins? She sat for a deposition yesterday afternoon. She confirmed everything. The medication log, the visitor timeline, the state of Evelyn's cognition. She stated clearly that your grandmother could not have knowingly signed a legal instrument on November 12th. Is it enough to void the lien?" I asked. Picking up the document, it felt light, but it carried the weight of a gavel. "It is enough to freeze it," Malcolm corrected. "We filed the motion this morning, a temporary restraining order on the deed transfer. If Gavin or his lenders try to execute a sale or a foreclosure while he is at sea, they will hit a judicial wall so hard they will see stars." "Good," I said. "Now, let's lock the door." I spent the next 3 days turning Grandma Evelyn's house into a fortress. I hired a locksmith to drill out the old deadbolts, the ones Gavin had keys to, and install high-security electronic locks. I installed cameras at the front and back doors, linking the feeds directly to my phone. Walking through that empty house felt like walking through a crime scene before the crime had been fully committed. I touched the dust on the mantelpiece. I looked at the outline on the wallpaper where a painting used to hang, one of the few valuable things my parents had already quietly sold years ago. I stood on the front porch, the peeling white paint rough under my hand. I took out my phone. I didn't usually post on social media. My family used Instagram as a weapon of mass envy, curating a life that didn't exist. I usually just lurked. But today, I had a message to send. I took a selfie, me, unsmiling, with the number plate of the house clearly visible over my shoulder. The lighting was stark, gray and serious. I typed a caption. "Restoring what was taken." I posted it to my story. It was a pebble thrown into a pond. I waited for the ripples. The first ripple came from the news. On Wednesday, the South Carolina Education Lottery released a statement. I heard it on the radio while I was driving to the hardware store. And in local news, the staggering $100 million Mega Millions jackpot from the Thanksgiving drawing has finally been claimed. The winner, represented by a private trust known as Cedar Lace Holdings, has opted for the lump sum payment, while the identity of the winner remains anonymous. Lottery officials confirmed the winning ticket was purchased at the Stop and Go Market on Dorchester Road. I gripped the steering wheel. The Stop and Go on Dorchester Road. That was the gas station my father stopped at every single Thursday. It was 3 blocks from my parents' house. The news cycle picked it up fast. By noon, it was on the local television affiliates. By 2 o'clock, it was trending on local Twitter. Everyone was asking the same question. Who won the Thanksgiving jackpot? And then, the ripples turned into a wave. My phone buzzed. It was the Thompson family group chat. A digital space I usually kept on mute because it was mostly my mother posting photos of her outfits or Sabrina bragging about her dinners. Aunt Linda, did you guys see the news? Someone won the Mega Millions. Cousin Mike, yeah, $100 million. Insane. Aunt Denise, it was bought on Dorchester Road. That is right near your house, isn't it? Bob? I watched the screen. I could practically see the gears turning in their heads across the ocean. They were on the ship now, likely paying exorbitant fees for satellite Wi-Fi just to stay connected to the gossip. Sabrina, Dorchester Road? Dad goes there all the time. Mother, Bob bought a ticket there. He bought a whole stack of them for the party. There was a pause in the chat, a long, pregnant pause where I knew exactly what they were thinking. They were remembering the envelope. They were remembering the joke. Then, the private message came. It was from my mother. Mom. Camille? Honey, I saw the news. How are you doing? I didn't reply. I let the message sit there. I went into the kitchen and made myself a sandwich. I ate it slowly. I washed the plate. 10 minutes later. Mom, I was just thinking about that ticket Dad gave you. As a gag gift. You know, just for fun. 20 minutes later. Mom, you didn't throw it away, did you? I sat down on my sofa. I could feel her panic radiating through the satellite connection. She was trapped on a boat, thousands of miles away, and the realization was creeping up her spine like a spider. I typed 2 words. Camille. Yes. Why? I watched the 3 little dots appear instantly. She was typing. Then she stopped. Then she typed again. Mom. You still have it? The actual ticket? Camille. It is safe. I didn't say I won. I didn't say I lost. I just said it was safe. That was the match in the powder keg. My phone started to ring. First, it was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then my father. Voicemail. Then Sabrina. Voicemail. Then Gavin. I sat there, watching the names flash on the screen like a slot machine that had spun out of control. They were calling back to back. They were passing the phone around. I listened to the voicemails later, savoring them like a fine wine. My mother's voice was high-pitched, breathless, forcing a cheerfulness that sounded manic. Camille, pick up. We are just so excited. We heard the news about the winner being from our area and we had a feeling. Call us back. We love you. My father's voice was different. It was the voice he used when he was scolding an employee. Camille, this is your father. If you have that ticket, you need to be very careful. Do not do anything until you talk to me. That ticket was purchased with family funds. We need to discuss the legalities. Call me immediately. Sabrina sounded like she was hyperventilating. Camille, oh my God, is it you? Tell me it is you. Gavin says the trust name is Cedar Lace or something? That sounds like you. Why aren't you answering? We are stuck on this boat and I need to know. And then, Gavin. His voicemail was the longest, and it was the most revealing. Hey, Camille, he said. His voice was smooth, too smooth. He sounded like he was trying to sell me a timeshare. Look, we are seeing the reports, if what we think is happening is actually happening. First of all, congrats. Seriously, that is amazing. But listen, you need to be smart about this. $100 million is a lot of weight. Taxes, liability, investment structures. You know this isn't your world. It is mine. I have already drafted some ideas for a family strategy. A way to protect the capital so we all benefit. Don't sign anything with any lawyers until I look at it. There are sharks out there. Camille, you need family right now. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment. There are sharks out there. Yes, Gavin. There are. And you are the biggest one. But you forgot that sharks can't hunt on land. And right now, you are the one treading water. He was offering investment help. He was trying to position himself as the gatekeeper. He wanted to get his hands on that money so desperately I could hear the hunger in his voice. He needed it to pay off the man in the black sedan. He needed it to fill the hole he had dug for my father. He needed it to save his own skin. I waited until 7 o'clock that evening. The sun had gone down. The house was dark. I opened the group chat. It had been silent for 2 hours, likely because they were arguing amongst themselves or trying to figure out if they could charter a helicopter off the ship. I typed a single message. Camille, video call tonight, 8 o'clock, everyone present, no exceptions. The responses came within seconds. Mom, we will be there. Dad, we are ready. Sabrina, calling from the cabin. Gavin, got it? They were terrified. They were hopeful. They were greedy. I went to my bedroom and changed. I took off my comfortable sweater and put on a crisp, white button-down shirt. I pulled my hair back into a tight, severe bun. I put on a pair of glasses I didn't really need, but which made me look like an auditor. I set up my laptop on the kitchen table. Behind me was a blank wall. No personal details, no warmth, just a neutral background. I had the folder Malcolm had given me next to the computer. I had the photos of the text messages from Aunt Denise. I had the nurse's affidavit. I checked the time. 7:59. I logged into the video conference platform. I started the meeting. One by one. Their faces popped up on the screen. They were huddled together in what looked like a stateroom. The lighting was yellow and unflattering. My mother was wearing a robe, her hair messy. My father looked red-faced, like he had been drinking. Sabrina looked pale, her eyes darting around. And Gavin. Gavin was sitting in the front, wearing a polo shirt, leaning into the camera with that predatory intensity. "Camille!" my mother cried out the moment the audio connected. "Oh, thank God. We have been going crazy. Is it true? Tell us it is true." I looked at them. I looked at the people who had laughed at me, who had handed me a $2 ticket as an insult, who had called me independent so they could neglect me. I didn't smile. "Hello? Family?" I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice of the person holding the gavel. "Cut to the chase. Camille," my father barked, though there was a tremor in his voice. "Did you win?" I looked at the camera lens. I let the silence stretch for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I watched them squirm. "Yes," I said. "I won." I watched the reaction ripple through them. My mother shrieked. Sabrina covered her mouth. My father slumped back in his chair with a look of pure avarice. But Gavin didn't celebrate. He leaned closer to the screen, his eyes narrowing, calculating the percentage he thought he could steal. That is incredible," Gavin said, his voice trembling with suppressed greed. 100 million. Camille, listen to me. We need to talk about the transfer. We need to get this into a protected account immediately. I can set up—" "Stop," I said. I didn't shout. I just said the word with absolute finality. "We aren't going to talk about investments. Gavin," I said. "And we aren't going to talk about sharing." I reached for the folder on my desk. I held it up so they could see the label. It didn't say Cedar Lace Holdings. It said Harbor Ridge Funding. The color drained from Gavin's face so fast, it looked like a special effect. "We are going to talk about Grandma Evelyn," I said. "And we are going to talk about what you did." The smile vanished from my mother's face. My father went rigid. "I don't know what you are talking about," Gavin stammered, trying to laugh it off, but his eyes were terrified. "Camille, you are confused. The money? The money is safe, I said. Which is more than I can say for you. I opened the folder. Let's begin, I said. I have a lot of exhibits to get through, and you have nowhere to go. The screen flickered, pixelated for a moment, and then resolved into high definition. The contrast between my world and theirs was almost comical. On my side of the connection, there was a white wall, a generic lamp, and the silence of a house that had been purged of ghosts. On their side, it was an explosion of color. They were squeezed onto a sofa in what looked like a private lounge on the ship. Behind them, through a floor-to-ceiling window, the sky was a bruised purple and orange, a perfect tropical sunset that looked like it had been paid for. My mother was wearing a caftan with sequins that caught the light. My father had a cigar in his hand, unlit. Sabrina was clutching a glass of something pink, and Gavin was front and center, leaning toward the camera, his elbows on his knees, radiating the intense, predatory focus of a man who smells blood in the water. "We are here. Camille," Gavin said, his voice echoing slightly due to the satellite delay. "The whole family, just like you asked. Now, stop the games. The news said the ticket was claimed. Was it you?" I looked at them. I took a sip of water. I let them wait 3 full seconds. "Yes," I said. "It was me." The reaction was instantaneous. It was like watching a bomb go off in slow motion. But instead of shrapnel, it was pure, unadulterated greed. My mother let out a scream that distorted the audio. "I knew it! Bob! I told you she kept it!" She lunged toward the camera, her face filling the frame. "Oh, Camille! My baby! We are rich! We are finally rich!" My father dropped his cigar. He was grinning, a wide, gummy smile that didn't reach his eyes. "That is my girl. I knew you had a head on your shoulders. $100 million. That is legacy money. Camille." Sabrina was crying, but she was smiling through it. "I can't believe it. I really can't believe it. This changes everything. We can upgrade to the owner's suite. We can—" All right, settle down," Gavin barked. Taking control of the room, he held up a hand, silencing them. He looked at me, his expression shifting into a mask of professional concern. "Listen to me, Camille," Gavin said, his voice dropping to that smooth, persuasive register he used on clients. "This is a dangerous moment for you. Seriously, you are emotional. You are overwhelmed. You have vultures circling you right now. You need protection. I have already started drafting a structure. We need to move the funds into a family LLC immediately to mitigate the tax liability. I know a guy in the Caymans who can—" "I am not moving the money, Gavin," I said. He blinked, his smile faltering for a microsecond before he pasted it back on. "Camille, don't be naive. You can't just leave that kind of cash sitting in a checking account. You need a portfolio. You need a gatekeeper. I am going to fly back tomorrow. I will handle the paperwork. You just sign, and I will take the weight off your shoulders. We are family. We protect each other." "Protect," I repeated. "That is a funny word coming from you." "Excuse me?" Gavin frowned. "You talk a lot about protection," I said, my voice steady. "But I think you are confusing protection with predation." "Camille, what has gotten into you?" my mother snapped, adjusting her sequins. "Gavin is trying to help you. He is an expert." "Yes," I said. "He is an expert, and I want to show you all exactly what his expertise looks like." I moved my mouse. "I am sharing my screen." "What? Why?" Gavin asked, looking confused. "Just watch," I said. I clicked the button. The video feed of my face shrank to the corner of their screen, replaced by the PDF file I had open. It was the loan agreement from Harbor Ridge Funding. "What is this?" Sabrina asked, squinting at the screen. "It looks like a contract?" "It is a loan," I explained, "for $250,000 at 19% interest." I saw my father go pale. He recognized it instantly. He tried to reach for the laptop, but Gavin swatted his hand away, his eyes glued to the screen. This is private business. Camille, Gavin said, his voice turning hard. Take that down. Now. That is confidential corporate structuring. It stopped being private when you involved Grandma, I said. I scrolled down. I highlighted the collateral section. Property address, 442 Maple Drive. Mom, I said, do you recognize that address? My mother looked confused. That is Evelyn's house. Exactly, I said. Gavin and Dad took out a high-interest loan against Grandma's house. If they miss a payment, which, judging by the overdue notices I found in the study, they already have, the lender takes the house. Grandma ends up on the street. Bob? My mother turned to my father, her voice shrill. Is this true? You told me the business was fine. You told me we were liquid. It is a bridge loan, my father stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. Just temporary, to cover cash flow. Camille, you have no right to show this. I have every right, I said, because I am the one who is going to have to pay for your mess. We were going to pay it back, Gavin shouted. With the next deal. It was under control. Was it? I asked. Is that why you needed Grandma to co-sign? I scrolled to the signature page. The image of Grandma's shaky, traced signature filled the screen. Look at that signature, I said. Does that look like the woman who can barely hold a spoon? She signed it, Gavin insisted. She wanted to help the family. She was lucid. Really? I said. Let's check the tape. I closed the loan document and opened the second file. The affidavit from Mrs. Higgins and the photo of the medication log. This is the nurse's log from November 12th, I said, reading the text out loud. 2 p.m., patient administered hydromorphone, patient drowsy, disoriented. The loan was notarized at 3:45. She was high. Gavin, she didn't know who you were, let alone what she was signing. The room on the ship went deadly silent. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. Sabrina looked from Gavin to the screen, her eyes wide with horror. You drugged my mother? My mother whispered. I didn't drug her, Gavin yelled. She was already on the meds. I just facilitated the paperwork. You committed fraud, I said. Elder abuse, and you dragged Dad into it. Camille, stop, my father pleaded, his voice breaking. Please, we can fix this. With the lottery money, we can pay it off. We can make it go away. No one has to know. Not yet, Dad, I said coldly. I am not done. I looked at Sabrina. She was shrinking into the sofa cushions, trying to disappear. Sabrina, I said softly, you need to see this. I don't want to, she whimpered. You have to, I said, because he didn't just steal from Grandma, he stole from you. I opened the third file, the credit report Aunt Denise had pulled. This is a list of credit lines opened in the last 3 years, I said. 5 credit cards, 2 personal loans, all in the name of Sabrina Thompson Rourke. Sabrina leaned forward, squinting. I don't have those cards. I only have the one linked to Gavin's account. Look at the balances. Sabrina, I said. She scanned the numbers. Her mouth fell open. 50,000, 20,000, 80,000. Gavin? She turned to him slowly. What is this? Gavin was sweating now, profusely. He was cornered, and he knew it. It is for the business. Babe, I had to use your credit rating because mine was leveraged. It is standard practice. I am paying them down. You aren't paying them down, I cut in. They are in default. Sabrina, look at the red ink. He maxed out your identity to fund his lifestyle, to fund that cruise you are sitting on right now. You aren't rich. You are bankrupt. You own nothing but debt. Sabrina stood up. She looked down at her husband, the man she had preened over for years, the man she thought was her ticket to the good life. You used me? She screamed. You ruined my credit? You stole my name? I did it for us, Gavin shouted back. standing up to face her. To buy you the things you wanted. You think this life is free? You think those dresses pay for themselves? I was juggling chainsaws to keep you happy. By stealing from my grandmother? She shrieked. She slapped him. It was a loud, wet sound that echoed through the laptop speakers. Gavin stumbled back, clutching his cheek. He turned to the camera, his eyes wild with rage. You think you are so smart, Camille, he snarled. You think you can just sit there with your Photoshop documents and ruin me? That signature is real. You can't prove anything. It is her word against mine, and she is senile. Wrong, I said. I opened the final file. The forensic report from Silas Vance. I hired a forensic document examiner, Gavin, an ex-FBI agent. He analyzed the signature. He found 7 points of forgery. It is a tracing. And we have the time-stamped photos I took in Dad's study the night of Thanksgiving, the night you left the evidence sitting on the desk like an arrogant fool. Gavin froze. The color drained from his face completely. He collapsed back onto the sofa, staring at the screen as if it were a ghost. You were in the study, he whispered. I was getting trash bags, I said, mocking his own words. Remember? I closed the screen share. My face filled their screen again. I looked at each of them. My mother, sobbing into her hands. My father, staring at the floor. A broken man. Sabrina, standing over her husband like a vengeful spirit. And Gavin, the architect of their destruction, finally reduced to rubble. Here is the situation, I said. And I'm only going to say this once. They looked up. They were waiting for the lifeline. They were waiting for me to say that I would pay it off, that I would fix it, that the money would wash away the sins. I have instructed my attorney, Malcolm Hart, to file for an immediate injunction on Grandma Evelyn's property. We are freezing the deed. If you try to sell it, transfer it, or borrow against it, you will be arrested. But the loan, my father whispered. If we don't pay, they will foreclose. Let them try, I said. I bought the debt. Gavin's head snapped up. What? I contacted Harbor Ridge Funding this morning. I lied, or rather, I stretched the truth. Malcolm was in the process of doing it. I am negotiating to buy the note, which means, Gavin, you don't owe the bank anymore. You owe me. Camille, my mother wept. Please, we are family. No, I said. We are relatives. Family doesn't drug grandmothers. Family doesn't steal identities. I leaned into the camera. I am not going to pay off your credit cards. Sabrina, I am not going to bail out your business. Dad, and Gavin, I am certainly not going to invest in your strategy. I am going to use my money to ensure that Grandma Evelyn is safe, comfortable, and protected from you vultures for the rest of her life. You can't leave us like this, Sabrina screamed. We are stuck on a ship. We have no money. Gavin's cards are frozen. I know, I said. I heard the decline was quite embarrassing. How are we supposed to get home? She wailed. I suggest you enjoy the buffet, I said. It is free, and when you get back, well, I suggest you find good lawyers. You are going to need them. Camille, my father shouted. Don't do this. You are making a mistake. You need us. I needed a seat at the table, I said softly. But you didn't save me one, so I bought the restaurant. I looked at Gavin one last time. Luck surprises people, I said. And then, with a click that felt like a gunshot, I ended the call. The screen went black. The room was silent. I sat there for a moment, listening to the hum of my refrigerator. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't fear. It was the adrenaline of a clean kill. I stood up and walked to the window. It was raining outside, a soft, cleansing drizzle. I pictured them on that ship. The sunset was probably still beautiful. The ocean was probably still blue, but inside that room, the air would be toxic. They were trapped in a cage of their own making, floating in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but their lies to keep them warm. And me? I picked up my phone and dialed Malcolm. It is done, I said. Proceed with the filings. Did they confess? Malcolm asked. They didn't have to, I said. Their faces said everything. I hung up. I walked into my bedroom and looked at the small vase of dahlias on my dresser. They were fading now, the petals turning brown at the edges. I picked them up and dropped them in the trash. Time to plant something new, I whispered. The silence that followed the end of the video call was short-lived. It was a vacuum, a momentary gasp of air before the explosion, when the shock wore off on that cruise ship in the middle of the Caribbean. The fallout hit my phone like a meteor shower. It started with the accusations. My phone vibrated so hard against the kitchen table it sounded like an angry hornet. I watched the notifications stack up, a digital tower of panic and rage. Mom, how dare you speak to your father like that? After everything we sacrificed for you? You are ungrateful. Camille, you are a thief, Dad. That ticket was bought with my money. I gave you the cash. I have witnesses. If you don't transfer the funds to the family account by morning, I am calling the police. Gavin, you have no idea who you are messing with. You think a few PDFs scare me? I will bury you in litigation for the next 20 years. Pick up the phone. Then, the tone shifted. It curdled into a sickly, desperate sweetness that was even harder to stomach than the threats. Mom, Camille, honey, please, Dad is having chest pains. We are all just stressed. We didn't mean those things. We are family. You know we love you. We were just joking at dinner. Can't you take a joke? Dad, let's just sit down and talk like adults. 50-50 split. That is fair. You keep 50 million. We take 50 to cover debts and secure everyone's future. Be reasonable. I didn't reply to any of it. I turned my phone over, screen down, and poured myself another glass of water. I wasn't drinking wine tonight. I needed to be sober. I needed to be sharp, because I knew Gavin wasn't just sending texts. He was making moves. I was right. At 9 o'clock the next morning, Malcolm Hart called me. Your brother-in-law is a busy man, Malcolm said, his voice dry and devoid of alarm. He just tried to file a priority claim with the Lottery Commission. How? I asked, putting the phone on speaker as I paced my living room. I have the ticket. The trust has already claimed it. He called the fraud division, Malcolm explained. He claimed the ticket was stolen property. He alleged that you were acting as an agent for the family when you received it, and that you embezzled the winning slip. He tried to place a freeze on the payout. My heart hammered against my ribs. Can he do that? He can try, Malcolm said. But he made a fatal error. He claimed he bought the ticket and gave it to you, but we have the security footage from the stop and go on Dorchester Road. It clearly shows your father purchasing the ticket, and we have the timestamp of the transaction. Furthermore, under South Carolina law, a lottery ticket is a bearer instrument unless signed. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Camille, but the trust structure is the final 10th. Because Cedar Lace Holdings is the claimant, Gavin isn't suing you. He is suing a Delaware trust. He is trying to box with a shadow. So it failed? Spectacularly, Malcolm said. The commission laughed him off the phone once they saw our documentation. But Camille, this shows his desperation. He is throwing everything at the wall. He knows the walls are closing in on the Harbor Ridge fraud, and he needs a war chest to fight it. He thinks your lottery win is his piggy bank. He is never touching a dime, I said. I know, Malcolm replied. But be prepared. He is going to try to destroy your character next. If he can't get the money legally, he will try to shame you into giving it up. Let him try, I said. I have nothing to hide. By Wednesday, the atmosphere on the ship must have turned into a pressure cooker. I could imagine them in their cabin, the luxury suite that was now just a gilded cage, arguing in hushed whispers so the stewards wouldn't hear. That afternoon, my phone rang. It wasn't the group chat. It was a direct call from Sabrina. I debated not answering, but curiosity and a strange, lingering sense of pity made me swipe right. Hello, Sabrina. He is at the casino, she whispered. Her voice sounded raw, like she had been crying for 2 days straight. He is trying to win back the port fees on the blackjack table. He took my earrings. I am sorry, I said, and I was, not for the money, but for the sheer pathetic reality of it. Did you mean it? She asked. About the credit cards? The identity theft? Every word, I said. Denise pulled the report. You can check it yourself when you get back to land. Or you can log into your Credit Karma app right now if the Wi-Fi is working. He has maxed you out. Sabrina, you are the safety net he was planning to burn. I heard a jagged intake of breath on the other end. I didn't know about the house, she said. Her voice was trembling. I swear to God. Camille, I can be a bitch. I know that. But I wouldn't. I wouldn't put Grandma on the street. I thought the money came from his bonuses. I thought he was a genius. You didn't ask questions, I said gently, because the answers would have been inconvenient. I know, she sobbed. I know. But Camille, you have to understand. It was easier to look away. It was easier to laugh at you than to look at what my life actually was. If I admitted you were right, then I was just a trophy wife to a crook. It was the first honest thing my sister had said to me in 20 years. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because he is scary, she whispered. He is not sleeping. He is pacing the room, talking to himself. He keeps saying he is going to fix you. He is calling people, bad people. Camille, I am scared. You should be, I said. But not of me. Can you help us? She asked. Please, just pay off the cards. I will leave him. I promise. Just clear the debt so I can start over. I closed my eyes. It would be so easy. I could write a check for $200,000 and wipe her slate clean. It would be pocket change to me now. But I remembered Grandma's warning. Don't let the money make you weak. No, I said. Camille, I won't give you money. Sabrina, I said firmly. Money is what got you into this mess. Money is the drug you and Gavin are addicted to. If I pay off your cards, you will just find another Gavin. So you are going to leave me to drown? She cried. No, I said. I am going to throw you a life raft, but you have to swim to it. What do you mean? I will pay for a lawyer, I said. The best divorce attorney in Charleston. I will pay for a forensic accountant to separate your liability from his fraud. I will pay for a temporary apartment for you and the kids for 6 months. I will help you get a job. I will help you stand on your own 2 feet. There was silence on the line. But I won't give you a single cent of cash, I continued. And I won't pay off the debt Gavin created. You fight him for that. You make him pay. I can't work, she whispered. I haven't worked in 10 years. Then you will learn, I said. Like I did. It is called independence. Sabrina, it is not an insult. It is survival. She sniffled. He will kill me if I leave. He won't touch you, I said. Because by the time you dock in Miami, he is going to have much bigger problems than a divorce. I hung up before she could beg again. The bigger problems arrived on Thursday in the form of Aunt Denise. She met me at my apartment this time. She looked energized, her cheeks flushed with the thrill of the hunt. She carried a thick accordion folder. It is worse than we thought, Denise said, spreading papers out on my coffee table. I reached out to those other families, the ones I heard whispering at the club. And? Harbor Ridge Funding isn't just a lender, Denise said. It is a predatory ring. They target families with high equity and low liquidity, mostly elderly people or families in distress. They issue these bridge loans with terms buried in the fine print that trigger immediate default if the borrower misses a single update call or insurance filing. She pointed to a document. This is the Johnson family. They lost their farm 6 months ago. Same signature on the loan officer line. Gavin Rourke. He is the face of it, I realized. He is the recruiter? Exactly, Denise said. He finds the marks. He uses his social connections to find people who are desperate to keep up appearances. He offers them a discreet lifeline, and then he feeds them to the wolves. This is a RICO case, I said, remembering the term from a legal drama. This is racketeering. It is, Denise agreed. And I sent this file to the State Attorney General's office this morning. I looked at my aunt. She had always been the quiet one, the one who brought the potato salad. Now she was an avenging angel. Thank you, Denise, I said. Don't thank me, she said grimly. I am doing this for Evelyn, and honestly, I am doing it because I am tired of watching your mother pretend she is better than everyone else while her son-in-law eats people for a living. The dominoes were falling fast now. On Friday, the regulatory investigation ignited. A reporter from the Post and Courier, tipped off by the Attorney General's interest, ran a story on the front page. Local financier linked to predatory elder abuse scheme. They didn't name Gavin directly yet. They used phrases like prominent local associate, but the description was enough. The finance world of Charleston, which is a small and gossipy ecosystem, reacted instantly. Gavin's firm, the legitimate front he worked for, issued a statement putting him on indefinite administrative leave. His club membership was suspended pending review. The man who had built his entire identity on access and prestige was suddenly radioactive. That afternoon, my parents called again. They sounded different this time, defeated. Camille, my father said. He sounded old. We saw the paper. I assumed you would, I said. This is going to destroy us, he said. The reputation, the business, people are talking, the neighbors are asking questions. The truth has a way of being noisy, I said. Can't we settle this quietly? My mother pleaded. Pay off the loan. Get Denise to drop the complaint. We can say it was a misunderstanding. We can say Evelyn was confused. Please, Camille, think of the shame. We can't show our faces at church. I felt a flash of white-hot anger, even now, with the noose tightening. Their biggest fear wasn't that they had hurt Grandma. It wasn't that they had committed a crime. It was that the people at church might look at them differently. The shame is yours, I said, my voice shaking with the effort to keep it steady. You earned it. You bought it with Grandma's house. I am not going to hush it up. I am not going to pay to polish your reputation. You are destroying this family, my mother cried. No, I said. I am just turning on the lights. If the room is dirty, that is not the fault of the light switch. We will never forgive you for this, my father said. That is fine, I replied. I stopped looking for your forgiveness the night you handed me a $2 ticket and laughed. I hung up. The final piece of the trap snapped shut on Saturday. Malcolm called me to confirm the court date. Monday morning, he said. Emergency hearing for the permanent injunction on the property deed. The judge has reviewed the forensic report and the nurse's affidavit. He wants Gavin there. He is still on the ship, I said. They dock on Sunday. Then he will have a sheriff's deputy waiting for him at the gangway to serve the subpoena, Malcolm said with satisfaction. Welcome home, Gavin. I spent Sunday alone. I didn't go out. I sat in my apartment, looking at the city skyline. I thought about the $100 million. It was sitting in the trust account, accruing interest at a rate that earned more in an hour than I used to make in a year. But I realized something strange. I didn't care about the money. I was glad I had it. I was glad I could pay for the best lawyers and save Grandma's house. But the money itself wasn't the victory. The victory was the silence on my phone. For the first time in 34 years, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't afraid of their judgment. I wasn't the little girl at the end of the table hoping for a scrap of attention. They had spent my entire life bullying me into being small. They needed me to be small so they could feel big. They needed me to be the failure so they could be the success. But the moment I stopped playing their game, the moment I stopped seeking their validation, their power evaporated. I wasn't small anymore. I was a giant, and I didn't need their permission to exist. My phone buzzed one last time that evening. It was a text from an unknown number. You think you won? Watch your back. I knew it was Gavin. It was a burner phone, a last-ditch attempt to scare me. I smiled. I typed back a single sentence. I am not watching my back. I am watching the front door. See you in court. I blocked the number. I went to bed early that night. I slept deeply, without dreams. Monday was going to be a long day. I had a family to dismantle and a grandmother to save. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't dreading the fight. I was looking forward to it. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and old decisions. It was a smell I had grown to appreciate over the last 48 hours because it was the scent of a place where feelings did not matter. In this room. My mother's tears were irrelevant. My father's bluster was noise. Gavin's charm was inadmissible. The only things that breathed in here were facts. And for the first time in my life, I had all of them. I sat in the second row behind the plaintiff's table. Malcolm Hart stood before the bench, a figure of absolute calm in a charcoal suit. Across the aisle, Gavin sat with a court-appointed lawyer because his usual legal team had dropped him the moment the regulatory investigation hit the newspapers. He looked diminished. The expensive tan from the cruise was peeling, revealing sallow, sleepless skin underneath. My parents were not there. Malcolm had advised them to stay away to avoid potential perjury charges if they were called to testify about the timeline. "Your Honor," Malcolm said, his voice carrying to the back of the room without effort. "The evidence before you is not circumstantial. It is scientific. We have submitted the analysis from Mr. Silas Vance, a forensic document examiner with 30 years of federal experience. His report concludes with 99% certainty that the signature on the deed transfer and the loan guarantee is a simulation." He picked up a second document. "Furthermore, we have the sworn affidavit of Mrs. Sarah Higgins, the attending nurse on duty. The medical logs from November 12th at 2 in the afternoon, less than 2 hours before this document was allegedly signed, show that Evelyn Ward was administered 2 milligrams of hydromorphone. She was noted as disoriented and drowsy. She lacked the capacity to consent to a lunch order, let alone the leveraging of her primary residence." The judge, a woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose and a face that suggested she had seen every variety of human greed, looked over the papers. She flipped the page. She looked at Gavin. Gavin didn't look up. He was staring at the table, picking at a loose thread on his cuff. "Mr. Rourke," the judge said. Her voice was not loud, but it stopped the air in the room. "Do you have a counter-argument to the medical timeline?" Gavin's lawyer whispered something to him. Gavin shook his head. "No, Your Honor," the lawyer said. "Then the ruling is simple," the judge said, closing the file. "The lien on the property at 442 Maple Drive is void ab initio. It is invalid from the start due to lack of capacity and evidence of fraud. The deed remains with Evelyn Ward." She banged the gavel. It was a sharp, wooden sound, a period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. But I wasn't done. Malcolm turned to me and nodded. I stood up and walked to the clerk's desk. I took a checkbook out of my bag. There was a remaining balance on the original mortgage, not the fraudulent loan Gavin had taken out, but a small, lingering equity line my grandfather had opened years ago for repairs, to fully secure the house, to make it untouchable. It had to be clear. I wrote a check for $82,000. I handed it to the clerk. I wasn't doing this as a favor to my parents. I wasn't saving their inheritance. I was building a moat. "The property is now unencumbered," Malcolm announced to the court record. "And we are filing a petition for an irrevocable trust to hold the deed. The trustees will be a corporate fiduciary and Camille Thompson, no other family member, specifically Robert Thompson, Martha Thompson, or Sabrina Rourke, will have signatory power, access, or right of residence without express written permission from the trustee." I watched Gavin's back as Malcolm listed the names. He didn't move. He knew what that meant. He couldn't sell it. He couldn't borrow against it. He couldn't even sleep on the couch if I didn't let him. The piggy bank was smashed, and there was nothing inside but dust. We walked out of the courtroom into the bright, harsh hallway. Gavin was already gone, slipping out a side door to avoid the 2 reporters waiting by the elevators. But my mother was there. She must have been waiting in the lobby. When she saw me, she rushed forward. She looked tired. Her hair wasn't perfectly coiffed. She looked like a woman who had spent the last week realizing that her social standing was a hallucination. "Camille," she said, reaching for my arm. I didn't flinch, but I stepped back, just one step, enough to put air between us. "It is done, Mom," I said. "The house is safe." "I know," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "I know, and we are so grateful. We can start over. We can be a family again. Gavin made mistakes, but we can move past this. We can—" "Stop," I said. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. My voice was the temperature of the marble floor beneath our feet. "There is no we in this equation anymore," I said. "I saved the house for Grandma, not for you. You don't live there. You don't own it. And you are not going to manage it." But I am her daughter," she stammered. "You are the daughter who let her husband and son-in-law treat her like an asset to be liquidated," I said. "I am setting up a care fund for her. I am hiring nurses. I am paying for the upkeep. But the legal documents Malcolm just filed are ironclad. You cannot make medical decisions for her anymore. You cannot access her accounts. And if you want to visit her, you will call the nursing supervisor first." "You are treating me like a criminal," she hissed, the old anger flaring up through the sorrow. "I am treating you like a liability," I corrected her, "because that is what you taught me to do with things that cost too much and offer no return." She stared at me. She looked at my face, really looked at it, and realized for the first time that the daughter she had bullied for 30 years was gone. In her place was a stranger with a checkbook and a memory like a steel trap. "I loved you, Camille," she whispered, playing her last card. "I know," I said. "In your own broken way. I think you did. But you loved your comfort more. Goodbye, Mom." I walked past her to the elevator. I didn't look back. The next few weeks were a blur of construction and restoration. I moved Grandma Evelyn back home on a Tuesday. I had spent $50,000 renovating the ground floor. The bathroom was now fully accessible with a roll-in shower. A ramp had been installed at the back door, leading into the garden. When the transport van pulled up, I was waiting on the porch. The nurses wheeled her out. The moment she smelled the cedar trees and the damp earth of her own yard, she started to cry. We got her settled in her favorite chair by the window. I made her tea. "You did it," she whispered, looking around the room as if she were seeing it for the first time. "You actually did it." "We did it," I said, sitting on the ottoman beside her. "The wolves are gone, Grandma." "And Gavin?" she asked. "Gavin is busy," I said. "The lenders he borrowed from are not the kind of people who sue. They are the kind of people who show up. He has filed for personal bankruptcy, but I don't think that will stop them. And the Attorney General has opened a criminal probe into Harbor Ridge. He will be in depositions for the next 5 years. And Sabrina?" "She left him," I said. "Monday morning, she filed for divorce. I paid the retainer for her lawyer." Evelyn nodded, closing her eyes. "Good. She woke up." "She is waking up," I corrected. "It is a slow process." 2 days later, I met Sabrina for coffee. We went to the Daily Grind, the same place I had met Aunt Denise. It felt fitting. Sabrina looked different. She wasn't wearing the fake lashes. She was wearing jeans and a sweater that looked like it had been bought at a department store, not a boutique. She looked tired, but she looked solid. "The lawyer says I have a good case for full custody," she said, stirring her latte. "But Gavin is fighting for the assets. He thinks he is entitled to half the house." "He is entitled to half the debt," I said. "My forensic accountant is making sure of that." Sabrina took a sip. She looked at me over the rim of the cup. There was an awkwardness between us, a silence filled with years of slights and insults. "I got a job," she said suddenly. "Oh?" "Receptionist at a dental office," she said, a flush rising on her cheeks. It is $17 an hour. It is nothing compared to what I used to spend on lunch, but I don't have to ask anyone for it. That is a start." I said. She put the cup down. She looked down at her hands. Her wedding ring was gone, leaving a pale tan line on her finger. I remember that Thanksgiving, she said softly. When Dad gave you the ticket, I laughed. I laughed really hard. I remember, I said. I thought it was funny because I thought we were up here. She raised one hand. And you were down there. I thought we were the winners. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wet. But we were just the show, she said. You were the only real thing in the room. Camille, I see that now. I see what they did to you. And I see what I did to you. It wasn't an apology. Exactly. It was an admission. And strangely, it was enough. You are safe now, Sabrina, I said. You and the kids, that is what matters. Because of you, she said. Because you left, I said. I just opened the door. You had to walk through it. I left the cafe an hour later. I walked to my car, feeling lighter than I had in years. I drove to the outskirts of town, to a plot of land I had purchased quietly under the Cedar Lace Trust. It was an old nursery that had gone out of business. The greenhouses were shattered, the fields overgrown. I walked through the tall grass. I could see it. I could see the rows of flowers I would plant here. I could see the training center I would build, a foundation for women who had been financially abused, a place where they could learn to manage their own money, their own lives, their own futures. I would call it the Evelyn Initiative. I reached into my pocket. I didn't carry the lottery ticket anymore. That was locked in a vault in Switzerland. But I carried a photocopy of it, folded into a tiny square, $2. That was the price they had put on my dignity. $2? A throwaway joke, a crumpled piece of trash handed to the disappointment of the family. They had meant to break me with it. They had meant to remind me of my place. I unfolded the paper and held it up to the sun. The numbers were black and stark against the white background. They had handed me an insult, but by sheer, blind, magnificent luck, they had accidentally handed me the key to the cage. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was just free. I took a breath of the clean air. I looked at the soil at my feet, rich and ready for planting. Thank you, I whispered to the ghosts of the family I used to crave. Thank you for the $2. It was the best investment you never made. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed Camille's journey from being the family underdog to taking absolute control of her destiny, please let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear your thoughts on how she handled Gavin and her family. Make sure to subscribe to the Jane Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button and smash the hype button so this story can reach even more people who need a reminder that sometimes the best revenge is just winning.